on this important topic. So now, before we proceed, as moderator for today's session, allow me to introduce myself. So my name is Siti Nurul Izzati binti Hanafi. Yes, it's quite a long name, isn't it? So most people call me Izzati, and you are welcome to the same. I am a lecturer specializing in marketing under the Department of Business Administration, Kuliah of Economics and Management Science, IIIT, International Islamic University in Malaysia. So, okay, so it's truly a pleasure to have all of you today. If you have a moment, please do share your name, where you're joining us from in the Zoom chat. So as I know, we can see from the Zoom chat over here, we are joined by participants from around the world. And it's always inspiring to see how this program connects individuals across borders through the shared pursuit of Islamic business knowledge, isn't it? So, okay, so now let's take a look. We have like several minutes before, so now let's take a look at the distinguished lineup of speakers we have prepared for you today. So each of them brings not only academic excellence, but also practical insights around in Islamic values, okay? Okay, so the first one, as you can see, we welcome you, Dr. Ridwan, or Associate Professor Dr. Rodrigue Fontaine, or as many fondly call him, Dr. Ridwan. So he'll begin our session with the topic Virgin Theory and Practice, a lecture's journey. For me, I wish, I guess, a fitting reflective start to our morning, where we explore how academic knowledge can meaningfully shape professional practice. And next, we have Assistant Professor Dr. Zaireena Wan Nasir, who will deliver a compelling session titled Criticism on Western Ethical Theories. So this session might challenge us to think critically and comparatively about prevailing ethical models from an Islamic standpoint. So we do have our third speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Nurita Juhdi, who will be speaking on human resource management and organizational culture, where today the focus is more on performance and people dynamic are shaped through Islamic and principle. And to conclude today's sessions, we are joined by Assistant Prof. Dr. Fatin Husna Suib, who will present establishing ethical and legal foundation in entrepreneurship. So it is a strong closing to the day that ties innovation with Islamic ethics and legal accountability. So that's all. So that is so you need to be here until the end. Hoping that it clarifies you what we're going to learn today. So, okay, so to ensure a smooth and respectful learning environments, I kindly remind all participants of a few guidelines. So please keep your microphone mute at all time unless you are invited to speak. And should you have any questions, so feel free to type them in the chat box. So, inshallah, our speaker will allocate time for Q&A after each lecture. And then for speaker, we have around 35 minutes for their presentation and followed by a brief Q&A session. So I will assist in managing the time and transition throughout, okay? Okay, so it's now 8:55, isn't it? And with that, let us begin our session officially. So before we proceed to the first lecture, I invite everyone to take a moment to recite Surah Al-Fatiha silently with the intention that our gathering today will be filled with benefit, clarity, and barakah. Bismillah. So may Allah is our learning and journey today and grant us understanding that leads to action, inshallah. Ameen. So can we start early, Dr. Ridwan? Okay, so with that, it is my honor to welcome our first speaker for the day. So Associate Professor Dr. Rodrigue Fontaine, affectionately known as Dr. Ridwan. So his presentation title will be Virgin Theory and Practice, a lecturer's journey. So without further ado, I now invite Dr. Ridwan to take the virtual floor. Okay, Dr. Ridwan, the session is yours.
Hey, thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah, shuru la ilaha illallah wa shuru anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. So let me start by welcoming everybody. I'm a bit surprised that we're starting 5 minutes early, but never mind. I follow the instructions. So I will start with going with my slides. Let me go back to the beginning of my slides. Oops. So I'm building from our discussion last week, and I'm also assuming that some people who are joining us today may not have joined us last week. So I'm trying to repeat some of the things, but then move forward as well. So what we started doing is the theme or the scope that we've been giving is to talk about Islamic business for 8 weeks, 45 minutes about in each week. And on the 9th week, we have a guest lecture. If you're only taking this module, basically you're developing a skill. That's what that's what I've said before, and what I will continue to do over the next few weeks. But this is also laying the grounds for the other modules. So I'm presenting the information in a certain way so not to overlap with the other modules. But if I was the only one teaching this, I would maybe present the information in a slightly different way. And I hope you understand why I do that. The key thing that I wanted to do in these series of lectures is basically explain the fundamentals of Islamic business principles, talk about the difference between halal, haram, and ethical business practices. So those key concepts were kind of introduced last week. So I'm not really gonna talk about that, but I'm really going to focus on this idea of reflecting on the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I want to justify this. Now, the reason why I want to talk a little bit about my story as a lecturer is because normally when I meet people and I explain to them that I'm teaching Islamic management, their reaction is generally a bit skeptical. And they start questioning, what is Islamic management? Is this something real or not? Or, how do you come up with these things? Like, do you sit in your office alone with a computer and just write something, or how does it work? And I feel that part of the methodology as a Muslim scholar is to explain what is my approach to research, how do I do research, what are some of the things that I've learned over the years. Do I do research alone? Do I do research with other colleagues? Do I do, just a literature review, et cetera, et cetera. So the more you understand my approach to research and how research is done in the area of Islamic management, the easier it is for you to appreciate, okay, this is what's going on in this particular field. So a little bit about myself. So I converted to Islam in 1993. That's not very important, but sometimes people are confused because of my name. Some of you may know that there's no obligation to change your name when you convert to Islam. Okay, so this is one of those issues of fiqh that sometimes are debated, but actually there's no need to change your name. So my contract is under my non-Muslim name, and so that's why if you are confused why, Rodrigue sometimes and why Ridwan, that's the reason. I was born in the UK, so I started working in the UK. I did my bachelor's in the UK. I did my master's in the UK. I arrived in Malaysia in 1999, and I started doing a PhD in cross-cultural management, and I completed that PhD in 2004. So in 2004, I had to make a decision, and I realized that a lot of the research in the area of cross-cultural management was very predictable, and it actually wasn't very exciting. So I decided, rather than spend the rest of my life doing research in cross-cultural management, I want to do something else, and I decided I'm going to focus on Islamic management. Now, at the time, I asked myself this question: is Islamic management something real? Right? Is there such a thing that can be called Islamic management? And for a few months, what I did is I went around different businesses in Kuala Lumpur. I met a number of people who had access to, who were CEOs of companies, and I asked them, how do you manage your business? That's one thing. The second thing that I asked them is, what we don't often like to talk about is the fact that there's a big problem in the Muslim world when it comes to corruption, right? And so I don't want it to be in a scenario where we talk about Islamic business, we talk about Islamic management, but then when it comes to the reality, we're just giving bribes, and then it's like we're being very hypocritical. So one of the questions that I asked these people that I met is, can you do business without giving bribes? And the interesting thing is, a lot of them were actually applying Islamic management principles, and a lot of them were able to do business without
Recording
giving
in
bribes.
progress.
But everyone had their own approach, right? So I remember there was one person, he was in cybersecurity. And so when I asked him this question about, can you do business without giving bribe? He gave me his scenario. So normally he deals with other engineers, typically in IT, and they have a problem to solve. Okay? Now, if the contract that they sign, the cybersecurity contract, is of a large amount, then other people will come, and then the big people will start asking for a bribe. But at the level of the engineers, they're not interested in that. They just want to solve a problem. So he said, my friend told me, if I do one big contract for, let's say, 250,000, I will get a lot of attention, and then somebody from the top will start asking for money. But if I have lots of small contracts for basically the same amount, it will escape everybody's notice, and I'm just dealing directly with the engineer. So that way I avoid the problem of bribery simply by keeping a very low profile and just helping my counterpart in that company solve their cybersecurity issues. So that was one example. I met another guy. It was really interesting. When I started asking this question about bribery, he just laughed and he said, it's very easy. The second someone asks you for a bribe, you just say goodbye and you go and find another customer. And he said, there's actually a lot of customers out there who want to do business without giving bribes. So it's not that difficult. It's just that you have to have that mindset. I don't want to do business this way. I just want to be straight. So with all these interactions, I was actually quite convinced that Islamic management is something real, but it hasn't been documented. And it hasn't been documented because in the Malaysian context, people want to keep a low profile, right? People don't want to declare their Islamic management identity, if you want to put it that way, because it's a multicultural society. People prefer to avoid confrontation, etc., which I absolutely understand, and it's not a problem. It's just that it makes it a little bit more difficult to document the process. Okay? So I didn't really define, sorry, I realized there's a typo here. I didn't really define what is Islamic business. Partly there are many definitions of Islamic business, But what I like to focus on is, for me, a company has got an Islamic business mindset if it is trying to create an Islamic corporate culture. So for me, the what I don't like is when people start saying, "Oh, let's do Islamic marketing, Islamic this, Islamic that," but at the same time, the top management has got a mindset which doesn't support these Islamic initiatives, right? So sometimes there's a lot of window dressing going on, but the core issues of Islam have not been properly understood. But I have met a number of companies where they actually do understand the core principles of Islam very well, and they operationalize it, right? In other words, they systematically create that culture inside their organization, and they spend a lot of time maintaining that culture, and they want that culture to reflect the values of the Quran and Sunnah. And that is for me, that's a good example. I'm not so much worried about the product and services that the company sells, because most companies are actually selling product and services that are halal, right? It's much more, how do you do this? How do you run your business? How do you deal with your customers? How do you deal with your suppliers? Those are more the issues that I'm interested in. And it's something that I believe it's not that difficult to do, but everybody who is involved in the business must understand there are certain values that we must not breach, right? And so one of the questions that I asked to one person is, do you find the perfect Muslim and then hire them? Or do you take ordinary Muslims and then train them to become better Muslims? And so when I asked the question, he laughed. He said, no, of course, we take ordinary people, and then through our process of tarbiyah, we develop them, we transform them, we educate them, so that as they go through our kind of internal processes of talent development, they, at the end of the day, they start to understand the Quran and the Sunnah in a more sophisticated way, and then gradually the way they see their religion and also what they do at work, that there's a shift in their perspective, right? And I was trying to kind of document this as some kind of a step-by-step process. And I think for many Muslims, when they're young, and especially when they're learning Islam at school, a lot of it is about obeying the rules and the regulations, right? Again, I may be wrong here, but when I talk to my students, they don't really know much about Allah's names and attributes. Or what they know is maybe just words, but if I ask them to explain in more detail, they're not really able to do that. For example, I often like to ask my students, what do you understand by the concept of Tawheed? And surprisingly, a lot of people find that a very difficult question to answer. Intuitively, they know what it means, but they don't really know how to articulate it. Then the second phase is they start thinking, or they start reading the Quran and Sunnah, they start reflecting on the Quran and Sunnah. Hopefully they also reflect on the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And as they do so, they realize that a lot of the Quran and the Sunnah does not emphasize the rules and regulations, but more on understanding the greatness of Allah and the relationship between Allah as your Rabb and you as an Abd. So as you go deeper in the Quran and the Sunnah, the fact that you have a Rabb is something that becomes very, very, very clear. And the fact that the most honorable thing for you to do is to become a good Abd of Allah, that also becomes very, very clear. But it's something that requires a lot of personal reflection, right? It's not something you can learn in the classroom. It's more, you've got to spend time with the Quran and the Sunnah, and you've got to start asking yourself questions. You have to, compare yourself to maybe the Sahaba or the Prophets, and then, there's a lot of introspection, which is kind of required. And then as your Islamic identity grows, following the rules and regulations become very easy, because you know that whatever has been made haram is bad for you, and whatever is wajib is good for you. So if you're clear about that, then following the rules and regulation is not difficult at all. So I always think of the first phase, where the focus is on, obeying the rules, as extrinsic motivation, right? So you are Muslim, but you depend a lot on social control, right? And so I've discussed this with many students, and they often talk about how they, for example, if their friends are praying, they will pray. But if their friends, for whatever reason, do not pray, then they don't feel like praying because they don't want to stand out. And then as their understanding of Islam grows, they will develop this intrinsic motivation, which is very, very internal, and is basically their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes so strong that they will do the right thing, whatever people around them do. So if people around them are good Muslim, alhamdulillah, they are just part of the crowd. If people around them are not practicing Islam, they will do what needs to be done, because at the end of the day, their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so strong. Okay. So I was talking about a journey, and I want to very briefly talk about this. I have my CV. I will show you my CV a little bit later on, and I'll tell you why I want to show you my CV a little bit later on. I have some data which I want to show you as well, some of the data that I've collected over the years. But I want to kind of set the scene a little bit. So I started my journey in Islamic management in 2004. And at that time, I was working in a private university in Malaysia called Multimedia University. And in 2008, I shifted to a university called Management and Science University in Shah Alam. And I had a student who was fascinated about futsal. So these two people who are playing futsal, none of these two people are my student, right? It's just a picture that I just wanted to show someone playing futsal. So Ayman had a lot of problems. Ayman is not his real name, by the way. It's a pseudonym. Ayman had a lot of problems. He had academic problems, emotional problems, spiritual problems, financial problem, girlfriend problems. Like, this guy was the most problematic person I've ever met in my life. And we had a mentoring system at the time. And so I was his mentor, he was my mentee. So he would come to my office, we'd talk about his problems, and he was very open about his problems. And he would always come to the meetings. So he was very, very, very messed up, but willing, or at least trying to change. And for the first year, I tried a conventional approach. So I talked to him about goal setting. I told him about, you have to change your study skills. All the conventional stuff, and none of it worked. And in fact, his situation was getting worse and worse and worse. And so after 1 year of exhausting all the conventional approach, I said to him, look, let's try something new. Why not we start watching Islamic videos together? And I wanted to watch the Islamic videos with him so I could see how he reacts to Islamic videos. Right? So I wanted to observe him while he was watching Islamic videos. And so he said, yeah, okay. Because by this time we had a very, very close relationship. So he said, yeah, fine. So we started watching Islamic videos together. I let him choose the videos. These were just videos which you found on the internet. And what I realized is that he was actually looking for something. He couldn't articulate what he was looking for, but he started looking for very specific kinds of Islamic videos. And it turned out that he had a lot of misunderstandings about Islam. And so every time we watched a video, so normally he would like choose videos which are 10, 15 minutes long. After that, we had like 1 hour discussion about the content of the video. And slowly, a lot of his misconceptions were uncovered. And I would actually explain to him that actually your understanding is incorrect, blah, blah, blah. And then slowly he changed. And the interesting thing is, once he clarified he solved his spiritual problems, his behavior problems changed as well. So all of a sudden he started going to class on time. A lot of the times he mended his relationship with his parents. He solved some of his anger problems because he was either in a state of anger or he was in a state of depression. So emotionally he was more stable. His grades started to improve. So he went from being in a very terrible situation to almost finishing as a very good student. Now, this had a big impact on me. And first of all, this is the first thing I want to emphasize. What I realize is the conventional approach does not work because it misses the spiritual element, right? So I always believe that when we talk about Islamic management, we should start by saying the conventional approach doesn't work very well. Okay, and there's a lot of statistics to prove that, but I'm not going to give you the statistics. But just from personal experience, the fact that I wasted 1 year trying a conventional approach and it had no impact. And then once you solve the spiritual issues, all the behavioral issues changed. That was like something that really left a very big impression. The second thing that happened is around 2010, I joined the International Islamic University. And so I had spent 1 year with this guy, Ayman, and he had changed from negative to positive. And I started thinking, would this work with my students? So I started asking my students, okay, throughout the semester, watch one Islamic video every weekend or every week and write down your reflections. And I let them choose whatever video they want to watch, and that was not a problem. The first time that I did this, I had no idea what would happen. It turned out that a lot of my students were actually very excited, and a lot of them had questions that they had about Islam. Why do we do this? Why do we do this? What about this? What about? And even though they had so many questions, the culture of finding the answers to the questions was not there, right? So they had all these unanswered questions in their minds, and because of this assignment, they started finding the answers, and they actually realized that all the answers were online. And every student basically submitted an assignment which was a summary of their reflections and so on and so forth. Many times their reflections were very basic. Okay, I really want to emphasize this. They discovered things that were so fundamental and so basic, but for them it was life-changing. And I had over the years I've seen many examples, but one that I want to highlight is very early on there was this one male student who did this assignment, and then in his final report he said, now that I've done this assignment and I started reflecting on the Quran and all of this, he said, I wonder why I spend my whole life reading a book without understanding it. And honestly, as someone who converted to Islam, this is part of Muslim culture that I completely do not understand. Everybody seems to be okay that, oh, well, we read Quran, but we don't understand what it means. Tak apalah, at least we get the barakah. What? It doesn't make sense. You wouldn't say that for any other book on this planet. So, once this student started thinking, why am I reading a book without understanding it? I would say, yes. I was so happy with that. Another thing that happened, which I want to share with you very briefly, is one male student. I don't know why. These are all stories about me. I also have stories about female students, of course, but this one was quite interesting. So he didn't do his assignment, and I didn't want to fail him. So I called him. I said, can you come to my office? I will give you an oral exam. So he came to my office, and I wanted him to reflect on Surah Al-Fatiha. So I asked him, okay, we're going to reflect on Surah Al-Fatiha together. Tell me, what are you grateful for? That was my first question. And of course, I was thinking of the ayat, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And he thought about for maybe 2 or 3 seconds, not more than 2 or 3 seconds. And he told me, I'm grateful because I'm not a drug addict. Wow. I was not expecting that answer. So I asked him to explain, and he talked to me about it. When he was at school, he had some friends who were doing drugs, and he had this dilemma, should he be with them? No. So anyway, the point that I wanted to make with this story is that thinking about reflecting on the Quran and Sunnah, like, it sounds something very, very high level, very like, you've got to have a PhD in Islamic studies or something like that. I said, no. We're talking about you're thinking about your life, and just thinking about your life or your personal experiences, or maybe the experience of your friends around you. Literally start thinking about it in the context of the Quran. And if that seems too scary, think about it just simply in the context of Surah Al-Fatiha, or some very basic hadith that everybody knows. And then all of a sudden, for a lot of my students, they realize, oh, everything that I've done in my life relates to the Quran. Everything that I've done in my life relates to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's just, I never thought like that, right? But when they start thinking like that, they realize that, first of all, the Quran and Sunnah is very relevant to them, and they actually develop a very optimistic mindset. And I just want to share one story. So I had one female student. She wrote a very nice essay, and that essay really inspired me a lot. So at the beginning of her essay, she was talking about her background. She was from a poor family. She was struggling financially. She tried to get scholarship. She didn't get the scholarship. So, going to university was a burden for her parents. And she felt bad about it, and she felt frustrated, and she felt angry, and all of that. And she opened up to her mother. Right? She was basically complaining to her mother. And the mother said, look, you're looking at it all wrong. Everything we have is from the rahmah of Allah. So why are you being so negative? Just appreciate the fact that you have the opportunity to go to the university. Everything is fine. Like, we are a happy family. Like, don't worry about it. And so she thought about what her mother had said, and her mindset changed completely. And so she in the final part of her essay, she was talking about how grateful she was and, you know, how happy she was now studying and all of that. When I looked at her essay, what I realized is nothing had changed in her life. Externally, all the factors were the same. She was still struggling financially. She still didn't have a scholarship. She still had a lot of friends who had more money than her, and so, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But in her mind, it was going from negative to positive. And so my realization was that a lot of the exercise of reflecting on the Quran and the Sunnah is really shifting people's perspective from negative to positive. Okay. Now, I here say I collected some data, qualitative and quantitative, from over 4,000 respondents. So let me show you my CV very briefly, and then I'll explain to you why hang on a second, why I want to show my CV. I think it's here. Okay, this is not what I want. I want here. No. Here is my CV. Okay, so sometimes when you talk about research, what people don't realize, it's a very ongoing process. So I actually went back to my CV and I realized my first paper in the area of Islamic management was published in 2008. So 2008, then 2009. And so the first few years, it was a lot of literature review. At that time, I hadn't started to collect data. But by 2013, I was starting to collect data because I started to have PhD students. And these PhD students had data. They had a questionnaire, they had data and all of that. So I started publishing more and more. And I then started looking specifically at the role of the Quran. So I started looking at, okay, so what are the lessons Muslims can learn from Surah Baqarah? What are the lessons we can learn from Surah Al-Imran? What are the lessons we can learn from Surah An-Nisa? Right? So these were very important because when you're trying to publish in an academic journal, you cannot just write whatever you want. You have to follow academic standards. Some of the data that I collected are in this kind of format. So this is a questionnaire on spiritual intelligence that one of my PhD students had. And question number 7 is probably the most common significant difference in all of the research. The more spiritual you are, the better you are at dealing with difficult situations. Okay. More recently, I have a student who has been looking at psychological capital. Sorry, I'm just scrolling down a little bit. Okay, so these are some of the constructs of self-efficacy, hope, resilience, optimism. And so we tested at the beginning of the semester. Then we would allow our students to reflect on the Quran and Sunnah throughout the semester. And then we test again at the end of the semester. And these are the results. So for the first 3 constructs of self-efficacy, hope, and resilience, the results are amazing. It's only optimism, it's slightly less impressive than the rest. Okay. So what does it mean? Whoops. The reason I said that is sometimes, again, when we talk to people from industry, they're not always convinced that we know what we're doing. You know, they think that we're doing something very, very abstract and so on and so forth. But actually, we can change the corporate culture inside an organization. I would argue we know how to do it. It's just a question of finding people who will have that vision of wanting to have an Islamic business and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. So a couple of things. First of all, the difference between tafsir and reflecting on the Quran. I think indirectly I already talked about that. One thing that I really teach my students is do not reflect on alone, right? Do not reflect on the Quran and Sunnah alone, because there's the danger of personal bias. So get into the habit of reflecting in the group, so that through the group discussion, first of all, you avoid personal bias, and then second of all, you learn from one another's experiences. So because I've been doing this for a while, after a while, I created this this YouTube channel, and I've got these different things that I talk about, and I want to kind of explore these a little bit, because what I believe is that there's a process. And the first question that I always ask my students is it easy or difficult to enter paradise? Because if you think that it's doable, then you're reading the rest of the Quran with that perspective that, okay, it is actually possible to enter paradise. If you have that perspective that entering paradise is very, very, very difficult, then you're reading the Quran with this perspective, right? So for me, addressing this issue is very critical. Then I believe that we should be following the sequence in the Quran. So first you start by reflecting on Surah Al-Fatiha, that is obvious, then on Surah Al-Baqarah, then on Surah Al-Imran, then on Surah An-Nisa, and so on and so forth. I do not think that skipping surahs is a good idea, right? So if you go straight away to Surah Al-Kahf, or to Surah Yasin, or to, you know, those surahs which are very popular, but you're not following the sequence of the Quran, you're actually missing a lot, right? So I always feel that Surah Baqarah is a foundation to understand the rest of the Quran. So it's like almost like Surah Baqarah is year 1. Surah Al-Imran is year 2. Surah An-Nisa and Al-Ma'idah is year 3. So if you go in the right sequence, the message is very clear. If you jump around in the Quran, I think that's a bad habit. And then there's something on the Sunnah. The underlying theory, I'm going to stop this because I know that I've already run out of time, is adult learning. This is for me the biggest thing that I learned over the years. Very few Muslim scholars talk about adult learning. And I think in many HR departments, they understand a lot about organizing workshops, but they do not understand much about adult learning. But I think that the key to understanding the Quran is to realize that the Quran uses an adult learning approach to education. And those who would like to know more, you can go to the work of Malcolm Knowles and you know, so on and so forth. So I've run out of time. I've got a few more slides. Let me just show you. This is just kind of, because my aim over the next few weeks is to look at some of these in more detail. So I kind of just wanted to introduce that. This is kind of a way that for me to remind myself, I'm not here to teach Islamic content. That's not my job. That's not my area of expertise. If I were to describe my area of expertise, generally speaking, I am a big proponent of adult learning. And this is kind of the framework that I have. So taqwa has to do with internal motivation. Akhlaq has to do with your behavior. Sabr has to do with your consistency. And Islamic business is kind of in the middle of this triangle. So if you're outside of this triangle, it's like either you...
31, this slide is not moving.
Oh, the slide is not moving.
Yeah.
So you haven't seen?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, never mind. Anyway, I've finished my slides. So I'm open to Q&A. I apologize for a slightly longer presentation that I was allocated, but I tried to, cover those things that were really important.
So actually, maybe you can just like extend a little bit more. Maybe we can like end the lecture at 9:40, maybe.
Okay, but then. Okay, should we start by addressing the questions, because there's a lot of things in the chat group.
Okay, so far I didn't see. Okay, maybe you can just ask from the floor. Is there any question you would like to ask? You can just raise your hands.
Okay, so I have a question here. What is in essence the thing about adult learning? Okay, so let me talk about adult learning versus the traditional approach. So everybody, I'm sure, has heard of the word pedagogy. Pedagogy literally means teaching to children. And so pedagogy is about, you have a teacher who knows a lot of information, and then you have students or children or students who don't know something. And so the teacher tells them something. For example, Paris is the capital of France. London is the capital of Great Britain. Amsterdam is the capital of the Netherlands, right? And then you can give them a test to see whether or not they have the right answer. So that is pedagogy. Pedagogy is fine for children because they need information. Adult learning is a completely different concept. Adult learning assumes that you already know things. So you know, for example, what is the Quran and the Sunnah. You already have experiences of life. For example, you're already working, you're already married, you already have kids. So you've got a lot of experience, but you don't necessarily have a reference point. So by adult learning, you are sharing your references with other people or with a text. And then you're trying to make sense of your life in relation to the text, right? So I'll give you an example. For me, the ayat in the Quran that is so fascinating is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And I see so many Muslims who complain all the time. They complain. Then I ask them, okay, you spend your whole life complaining. I'm exaggerating a little bit, right? But you do spend a lot of time complaining. So how can you recite Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen and complain at the same time? Right? Because at this, whatever is happening in the world is from the Qadar of Allah. So either you don't believe in Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, or you realize you shouldn't complain, right? And this is something that I feel very strongly about, because I see a lot of Muslims, for example, who do not take care of their health. So they eat the wrong kind of food, they don't exercise. Then they end up having illnesses, which are basically lifestyle illnesses. And then they say things like, Allah is testing me. I often feel like, no, Allah is not testing you. You are testing yourself. You made bad decisions that you know you should have not made, right? And you have all kinds of excuses that people give, but it's like, no, these are excuses. You know this is not what's really going on, right? So when you are using the Quran and the Sunnah as a reference, it's like you're looking at the mirror, but the mirror is the Quran and Sunnah. But sometimes you need to discuss this with other people. right? So, like, I have a friend who is like this. When we discuss things, right? Sometimes he says to me, he says, Ridwan, I think you are making an excuse, right? Because I'm like everybody else, right? I also make mistakes. I make excuses. I say, oh, this is, and he says, no, actually, you're making an excuse. Like, stop making excuses. And because we're very close, if he tells me that I make an excuse, I kind of start analyzing myself, and I realize, actually, I am making an excuse. So adult learning is having those very open discussions where you start thinking about your lifestyle, your problems, and whatever. And so when I do this in the classroom, the first 2 or 3 sessions, people are very uncomfortable.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, let me finish, and then I'll come back to this. So at the beginning, the first 2 or 3 weeks, people don't really open up because they feel a bit uncomfortable. But after a while, they start talking about issues which are more personal, and they start discovering certain things about themselves, and they start maybe exploring new ways of behaving, new ways of thinking. But it's always influenced by the way they read the Quran and the Sunnah, right? And my role in the classroom is very much that of a facilitator. So I never tell my students the way you're thinking is wrong. I will never say that to a student. If they have a way of thinking that is different from mine, I will say, okay, that's interesting. But I will often ask them, can you explain this in more detail? And so the more they try to explain the way they think, the more they realize that this actually contradicts with the Quran and the Sunnah. But with the adult learning, you don't tell them this is wrong. They have to figure out by themselves that this is actually not the right way to think. And so one of the things that adult learning places a lot of emphasis on is psychological safety. People need to feel that they are safe, that they can they can talk about things, and the people around them will not laugh at them. They will not make jokes about them. They will, nothing sarcastic, but it's more like building on one another's ideas and having that kind of very frank discussion. And when that happens in the classroom, it's very, very exciting because sometimes, okay, this one time when I was teaching, I had an MBA student who was helping me out, and the feedback that she got from our students was, we've been studying together for 3 or 4 years. So for 3 or 4 years, we've been interacting with one another, but those interactions were often very superficial. But when they come to my class and they start reflecting together on a group, they start talking about important things, like, are we really being good slaves of Allah? Are we really worshiping Allah the way He deserves to be worshipped? These are really hard questions for early adults in their early 20s. And they start talking about this, and they start bonding in a way that they have never had that kind of relationship between students, even though they've been interacting together for 3 or 4 years. So I think that's kind of describes the whole approach to adult learning. And I don't think it's difficult, but the person who is in charge of this process has to understand you're there to act as a facilitator, not as a teacher. So when I get into adult learning mode, I deliberately do not think of myself as a teacher. Okay, hopefully that helps. Okay, do we have any more questions?
Okay, so thank you very much.
There's a question here. Is adult learning the same thing as consultancy? consultancy for me is a broader project, right? So, for example, what I would love to do is get in contact with people from industry and act as a consultant for them to transform their organization. But that might be looking at their strategy, looking at the way they deliver the products and services, maybe looking at the way they finance their business. And one of the sub criteria would be using adult learning to transform the corporate culture. So for me, consultancy is the bigger project, and one of the dimension of a consultancy project might be how do you transform the corporate culture so that it becomes more aligned to the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ridwan, for that insightful and reflective response. So we hope this has set the tone for the rest of today's for Dr. Ridwan's session. So I would say thank you for the many thoughtful and engaging questions, as you can see on the chat itself. So it's really encouraging to see such active participation, but unfortunately, due to time constraint, we won't be able to address all of them during the session. However, we truly appreciate your enthusiasm and we encourage you to continue the conversation. And once again, thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Ridwan, for these insightful sharings. I guess it is the end for this. And yes, continue in the next week. We will see you again, inshallah, Dr. Ridwan.
Yes, I just want to do, there's one person who keeps asking me about WhatsApp group.
Okay.
I don't do this by WhatsApp group. I think WhatsApp is a terrible platform for reflecting on the Quran and Sunnah.
Yes, I agree.
Because
I also agree.
There's not enough context. But we inshallah, we will discuss this over the next few weeks. And my plan is to first we look at Surah Fatiha, then we look at Surah Baqarah, and as we do this, we can hopefully answer all the questions that everybody has, inshallah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to the facilitator, and good luck with the rest of the program.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ridwan. Okay, so now let's move on to our second session for today. So I guess, okay, so it is my pleasure to welcome Assistant Prof. Dr. Zaireena Wan Nasir. So let's see.
Assalamualaikum.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, so once again, so it is my pleasure to. Okay, so it's my pleasure to welcome Assistant Prof. Dr. Zaireena Wan Nasir, who will present on the topic criticism on Western ethical theory. So this session will dive into ethical paradigms, if I'm not mistaken, comparing dominant Western framework with Islamic ethical principles. So, Dr. Zaireena, are you ready?
Yes, Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so we may begin right away. So Dr. Zaireena, the screen is yours. You have like 40 minutes or 45. So with the Q&A, we will wrap the sessions, okay? So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I'll give the screen to you.
So can you see my screen?
Yes, it's clear.
All right. So for this session, last week we looked at Introduction to Business Ethics. We look at the topic ethics and its conceptualization in life. So today we're looking at ethical theories and principles, particularly Western ethical theories and principles. There are 6 of them. So for each of these ethical theories, we will look at the flaws in them. And next week, my colleague, Dr. Arfifa, will look at the Islamic alternative to these ethical theories. So let's start. Ethics, again, is coming from the word ethos, which means character, spirit, attitudes of a group of people or culture. It's concerned with what is good or right in human interaction and deals with justice and rights issue. It's a study of action and how men should act. It relates to one's behavior, and in order to act ethically, one is dependent on epistemology of ethics knowledge. It's impossible to make choices on how to act morally without knowledge on ethics. 5 branches of philosophy, in which ethics is a branch. There's metaphysics, study of existence, what's out there. Epistemology, study of knowledge, how do I know about it? Ethics is a study of action, what should I do? Politics, the study of force, what actions are permissible, and aesthetics is a study of art, what can life be like, right? So ethics is a branch of philosophy which studies action and what should I do, what is the right thing to do in a particular situation. Two branches of ethics, meta-ethics and normative ethics. So meta-ethics is a study about where ethical concepts come from and what they mean. There's two forms, moral ethical relativism and moral ethical objectivism. So moral relativism considers what is right or wrong is not absolute. It's relative, variable, depending on the person, circumstances, and social situation. For example, abortion is haram in Islam and the Christian religion and other certain religion, but in Japan it's seen as a neutral act rather than it's haram and so on, right? So moral relativism, what is right or wrong is not absolute. Moral objectivism considers certain act as objective right or wrong, independent of human opinion. So these are, for example, Islamic ethics, which considers that what is right or wrong is based on the Quran and Hadith, independent of human opinion. Normative ethics is a set of principles that guide or regulate human conduct. It provides general guidelines for deciding what is morally right or wrong. Two types of ethical theories. Teleological theory, known as consequential theory. This theory holds that the rightness of actions is determined solely by the amount of good consequences they produce. So one example is utilitarian theory that we will look at. So what is the right course of action? It is determined by the good consequences they produce. Deontological theory, known as non-consequential theory, it denies that consequences are relevant to determining what we ought to do. So deontological is non-consequences related. So this is the diagram. Meta-ethics, in which there are moral relativism and moral objectivism. Moral objectivism relates to divine command ethics such as Islamic ethical principles. With normative ethics, there's deontological ethic, which is non-consequences related, and teleological ethics, for example, utilitarianism, which is related to consequences. The first ethical theory that we will look at is utilitarian theory of ethics. It's one of the most influential teleological ethical theories. It's related to consequences, applied widely by economists to make rational decisions. It provides an answer to the practical question, what ought a man to do? So he ought to act so as to produce the best consequences possible, the common good that is utility, which means satisfaction or pleasure that people receive from consuming a good or service. According to this theory, our obligation in any situation is to perform the action that will result in the greatest possible balance of good over evil. So with utilitarian, to sum it in a phrase, is to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Four distinct theses of utilitarianism: consequentialism, hedonism, maximalism, and universalism. There are two forms of utilitarianism. So these are the two founders of this theory. Jeremy Bentham came up with classical or act utilitarianism. An action is right if and only if it produces the greatest balance of pleasure over pain for everyone. It judges an action to be right by virtue of the consequences of performing that action. So it's teleological theory. It supports moral relativism rather than moral objectivism. So what is moral? It depends on what is good for the greatest number of people. John Stuart Mill came up with rule utilitarianism. An action is right if and only if it conforms to the set of rules, the general acceptance of which will produce the greatest balance of pleasure over pain for everyone. So this principle relates to the importance of complying with rules. It puts emphasis on results only regardless of compliance to rules. We will look at the flaws of utilitarianism. So these are the criticisms of the ethical principles of utilitarianism. It does not give an account of the rights we have and what is just and fair. So this we'll look at in the theory of rights. Individual happiness and satisfaction cannot rationally be the main objective or sense of purpose in life. Critics list a number of noble people who sacrificed their own happiness in order to do good deeds. This theory is said to be degrading to humans. It degrades human beings to the level of animals because the theory suggests that people's only goal in life is attaining pleasure. Encourages selfishness. It propagates that one should be concerned only with maximizing one's own happiness. Unattainable, impossible to act always for the sake of the general happiness of society. Self-serving. The principle will be abused in order to serve particular interests of the person making that decision. And it's too time-consuming to calculate the amount of pleasure and pain implied by each alternative course of action, and then come to a conclusion based on the utilitarian calculus. The next theory that we will look at looks at Kant's ethics of duty theory. So this is from the philosopher Immanuel Kant, which is a deontological theory, which is non-consequences related, which insists that moral action requires conformity to moral principles. So Kant's work read, "Nothing can possibly be conceived in the world which can be good without qualification except a good will." So according to Kant, it is not a matter of the individual weighing up consequences. Human actions must be rationalized based on human intelligence and willpower. An action is morally right only if the actor is motivated by goodwill. So Kant focuses on the goodwill of the actor. Only an action done for rational principled reasons from a sense of duty has moral worth, according to Kant. If our act is from a sincere obligation to perform a duty towards others, our act has moral worth. Kant believed that reasons alone can give us the absolute moral truth and discover our sense of duty. There's two categorical imperatives that which he championed. The first categorical imperative and the second categorical imperative. What is the first categorical imperative? Act according to that maxim by which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. So this imperative reinforces that our moral actions should not be guided by our own inclinations, but guided by a sense of duty to the universal law. One's absolute moral truth must be logically consistent, free from internal contradiction. So it's about putting ourselves in the place of the receiving party before acting. For example, Robin Hood's act of stealing from the rich, giving to the poor, is wrong because stealing is a universally accepted as a wrong act, right? So first categorical imperative, act according to that maxim by which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. So Robin Hood stealing from the rich to give to the poor is wrong because stealing is, based on universal law, a wrong act. Second categorical imperative, act so that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in that of another, always as an end and never as a means only. So from the second categorical imperative, an action is morally right for a person if and only if in performing the action, the person does not use others merely as a means for advancing his or her interests, but at the same time respect their capacity to choose freely what they want. So according to Immanuel Kant, people, unlike things or objects, ought never to be merely used. For example, employees may be hired for their labor, skills, knowledge, and abilities, but must always be treated with respect as human beings, right? So second categorical imperative, never use human beings, humanity as an end, always as an end and never as a means only. Right. Kant's ethics complements Islamic ethical values, especially those related to ihsan, that is benevolence and being kind, respect, and adil, that is justice. Although it has its strengths and weakness, it yields two important findings. It introduces the principle of universalizability and emphasizes on respect for persons, the second categorical imperative. It provides a strong foundation for rights. Individual human rights must be acknowledged and are inviolable. What are the weaknesses of this theory? What exactly has moral worth? So that is a question. Is the categorical imperative an adequate test of rightness? What does it mean to treat people as means? So these are the weaknesses of Kant's ethics of duty theory. The third theory that we will look at looks at Aristotle's virtue ethics theory. So Aristotle's theory focuses on the virtues of human beings. It begins with the basic assumption that morality is both necessary and vital for human beings. It is impossible to live with human dignity without being a developed moral being. Morality is not a luxury that one can choose to have or not to have. It is a precondition for a life with human dignity. So these are, this theory recognizes the need for one to emulate virtues such as honesty, courage, self-control, and respect. People who compromise morality are degrading themselves. So when my students and I look at this theory, we would reflect that IIUM, International Islamic University, is a garden of knowledge and virtue, right? So when we discuss this theory, we relate to having virtues. Right. According to Aristotle, in order to achieve a rewarding life, one has to live in a just society. Individuals must engage themselves with good friends to support them. Thirdly, individuals need material and physical provisions. Finally, they need to develop and cultivate their potential. So external factors are the first three: living in a just society, engaging with good friends, needing material and physical provisions. The fourth theory about needing to develop and cultivate their potential is the internal factor, where a person is accountable for his or her development. There are some weaknesses of Aristotle's virtues theory. It does not seem to have room for basic concepts such as rights and obligations. This we will see in Theory of Rights. Aristotle's mean principle does not easily apply to all virtues. Mean is the middle of a virtue. So you can be someone of courage, and the other spectrum is cowardice, and the mean is in the middle. So it does not easily apply to all virtues. It may be seen as selfish theory by moral scholars, since the focus is on individual development rather than the effect of one's actions on others, like utilitarianism. Aristotle was writing in the context of 4th century BC, Greek city-state, so there are inequalities between the noblemen and the slaves. The inequalities were the norm at that time. Aristotle's virtues such as bravery and honor may be regarded as masculine virtues, ignoring feminist character traits such as humility and empathy. So there are masculine and feminine virtues are disregarded.
Recording stopped.
Virtue ethics. From the Islamic perspective, virtue ethics emphasizes on soul development, compatible with Islamic ethics, which concerns on akhlaq, that is human nature, attitude, and habit, according to Ibn Manzur 1990. Aristotle's theory gained keen interest among influential Islamic philosophers such as Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina, and Aristotle's theory was intensely studied by Imam Al-Ghazali, who composed 3 works on Aristotelian logic. The 4th theory looks at ethics of care, which some may consider it as a feminist theory. It's developed by the psychologist Carol Gilligan in the US. This deontological theory, it's non-consequences related, relates to the virtue of caring for others. It also requires one to be partial in resolving ethical issues. It emphasizes caring for the concrete well-being of those near to us and nurturing a concrete, valuable relationship. It is important not to restrict the notion of concrete relationships just between two individuals. It should encompass a larger system of relationships that make up communities. So this is classified as a communitarian ethic. 3 forms of caring, according to Carol Gilligan: caring about something, caring after someone, and caring for someone. So what are the 3 kinds of caring, according to Carol Gilligan? Caring about something, concerns one can have for things or ideas where there is no second person in whose subjective reality one becomes engrossed, right? So caring about something, for example, a government agency caring about the public in which it serves. Caring after someone relates to caring for someone who requires our support because of some limitations that person is experiencing. So caring for someone who is disabled, for instance. Caring for someone, the kind of care promoted by ethics of care, a kind of care shown by a mother to her child. The caring is not detached, but engrossed. The values that manifest the virtue of caring are compassion, concern, love, and kindness. There are certain weaknesses to ethics of care. It can degenerate into favoritism, right? You care for someone, it seems as if you are playing favorites. It can lead to stress and burnout of the caregiver, right? So caring for someone, you care too much, it leads to stress and burnout. The 5th theory looks at theory of rights. What are rights? It can be explained as entitlements of something. To have rights is to be entitled to act on our own or to be treated by others in certain ways without asking permission of anyone. It plays an important role in business ethics as well as in all moral issues, looking at the rights in a situation. Employers, employees, consumers, general public, humans, non-humans, each have rights, right? So we were discussing in class about the cats on campus. In IUM, we have lots of cats. People like to dump cats into the university, and we have a club, Abu Hurairah Club, that looks after the cats. So we're discussing the rights of the cats on campus. Theory of rights. There are types of rights. There are legal and moral rights, and there are natural or human rights. There are specific and general rights, and negative and positive rights. So legal rights are those which have been recognized and enforced as part of a legal system or law. For example, in Malaysia, we have Employment Act 1955, which lays down provisions to protect workers from being exploited by employers. Specific and general rights. Specific rights relate to involve identifiable individuals or parties, examples in contracts and agreements. It creates mutual obligations, duties, and commitments between the parties. For example, when you sign a sales and purchase agreement to buy a house, there are specific rights that are defined for both parties, whether you are the buyer or the seller. General rights involve claims against everyone or humanity in general. For example, freedom of speech, the right for survival, the right to be respected as a person. So general rights, for example, having freedom of speech. Negative and positive rights. Negative rights correlated with obligations on the part of other people or parties to consciously refrain themselves from acting in ways that interfere with one's own freedom of action. For example of negative right are individual right to property and wealth accumulation, one's choice of religion and beliefs, freedom from injury or the right for survival, and the right to individual privacy. Positive rights impose obligations on other people to provide us with some good or service, thereby act positively on our behalf. It reflects the vital interest that human beings have in receiving certain benefits from someone or society. For example, the right to a decent standard of living, having adequate health care, provision of children education, and so on, right? So those are positive rights. Natural or human rights. Natural rights has long been debated in history, going back to ancient Greeks, who held that there is a higher law that applies to all persons everywhere. There are two main features of human rights: universality and unconditionality. So natural or human rights is a subset of moral rights. Natural rights are rights that belong to all persons being human. United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 set forth basic human rights for all people. These are rights that belong to all persons purely by virtue of being humans, irrespective of race, gender, nationality, and other differences. So, two conditions of human rights: universality, rights that are possessed by everyone, and unconditionally, rights that do not depend on any particular practice or institutions in society. Example of human rights: right to be treated with fairness, right for freedom of speech, right to choose one's way of life, religion, etc. Then you have John Locke, who proposed the natural rights theory of that human beings have rights even in a state of nature, and the justification for uniting into a state is to protect these rights. This means a society or nation forms a government as a representative of all members to protect their individual natural rights as human beings. So the most important natural right for John Locke is the right to property. Although the bounty of the earth is provided by God for the benefit of all, no one can make use of it without taking some portions as one's own. So this is done by means of labor, which is a form of property. What a weakness of this theory of rights. It can be confusing to the mind, especially if everyone claims for individual rights. The issue will be whose rights are we going to fulfill, right? When there are overlapping rights. Many rights may be conflicting with one another, cannot be seen as an independent theory without linking to justice principles, which will come to the sixth principle of today, which is theory of justice. Justice is listed as a universally good moral value. It is associated with the probity and virtue, legality, and the exercise of process, serving the administration of rights, rewards, and punishment. Justice is also fairness. It relates to the equality of treatment. The two terms have been used interchangeably, although for serious cases, the term justice is used. The concept is used to evaluate not only on the actions of individuals, but the society as a whole. Justice and business ethics. The concept of justice is relevant to business ethics, primarily in the distribution of benefits and burdens. A moral right to be treated as a free and equal person. Also, benefits and burdens should be distributed equally. Justice is an important concept in evaluating various forms of social organization. We can ask about the justice of the economic system in which business activities take place. And then there's Aristotle's theory of justice. Aristotle emphasized upon the responsibility of politicians to develop social order within a just environment for individuals' ultimate happiness and well-being. Two forms of justice: universal or procedural justice. A just or morally upright person is one who always does what is morally right and obeys the law. Particular justice is concerned with upholding the virtue of considerateness, empathy, and avoiding greed in oneself by taking only a proper share of some good. So you have this diagram, the two forms of justice of Aristotle: universal or procedural justice, and particular justice. So particular justice, there are three forms: corrective or compensatory justice, which is a matter of compensating persons for wrong done to them. So this type of justice involves someone who has committed wrongdoings to another party. In order to be just, he or she has to compensate the other party out of empathy. For example, while driving, we accidentally knocked into a motorcyclist. He fell down and needed help. As a result, we have to perhaps compensate his burdens by clearing his medical charges, or at the least take responsibility to bring him to the hospital for immediate treatment. It is an act of injustice to blame him on the spot and defend ourselves to show that we were driving in the right path or lane. If we are in the wrong, certainly we will have to arrange for our insurance company to cover the cost of his motorcycle repairs. Such acts need not even be determined by legality. It is a name of corrective justice that our actions are taken for the unfortunate party since we are in the wrong. So that's corrective or compensatory justice. Then there is retributive justice. So this relates to punishment for one's wrongdoings. The extent of punishment should fit the crime or offense that has been committed. For example, in Malaysia, drug trafficking is a wrongful act, and anyone caught for such an offense faces a death sentence, right? So that's retributive justice. Is it a just and fair punishment? Perhaps so, because the consequences of drug trafficking causes widespread deaths in the long run due to drug addiction. So Aristotle's retributive justice resembles the qisas principle in the Quran. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 178, O you who believe, those with iman, the law of equality, qisas, is prescribed to you. In cases of murder, the free for the free, the slave for the slave, the woman for the woman. But if any remission is made by the brother or relatives of the slain, then grant any reasonable demand and compensate him with handsome gratitude. This is a concession and the mercy from your Lord. After this, whoever exceeds the limit shall be in grave penalty. So, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 178, describes qisas, which is retributive justice. And then there is distributive justice. It arises mostly on the evaluation of social, political, and economic institutions. For example, having a progressive income tax system. The richer we are, the higher the income tax we have to pay. After all, the revenues collected will be channeled accordingly for public expenditure, as well as project development to enhance the well-being of society at large. So distributive justice is comparative in a sense that it does not consider the absolute amount of benefits and burdens of each person, but each person's amount relative to that of others. So distributive justice in terms of having a progressive income tax systems, which we have in Malaysia. Justice in the market system. The world today promotes globalization and a free market system. Free markets feature a system where all economic decisions are taken by individual households and firms with no or minimal government intervention. Market decisions are made based on prices determined by the forces of demand and supply. The problems of distributive justice surface in this competitive society, especially the issue of inequality of distribution of wealth, power, and income. So you have American philosopher John Rawls, who lived up to 2002, who created a contemporary theory to resolve conflicts within a free market system called the egalitarian theory. So what is the egalitarian justice theory about? Rawls' theory is related to distributive justice, the distribution of society's benefits and burdens while applying the free market system. The theory recognizes that conflicts and equality in distribution of wealth, power, and income exist in a competitive free market system. The assumption of the theory, conflicts should be settled by devising a fair method of choosing the principles by which conflicts are resolved. For example, by having a contract between parties involved in the business. However, it assumes that conflicts may be resolved by devising a fair method of choosing the principles. So, This is what John Rawls' egalitarian justice theory is looking at the first principle of justice, principle of equal liberty, and the second principle of justice, difference principle, and principles of fair equality and opportunity. So what this presentation for today looked at, it has outlined common theological and deontological ethical theories that have been widely applied in the study of ethics. It introduces you to the main concepts and theories of ethics that have been developed over centuries by influential moral philosophers. So these are Western ethical theories, and by next week we will look at Islamic ethical theories, which will be presented by Dr. Arfifa. So that's all from me. Back to you, Dr. Izzati.
So, Alhamdulillah, thanks, Dr. Zaireena, for that well-articulated explanation of theory. So, okay, so now let's take a few minutes now for Q&A. So please submit your question in the chat box and I'll read them out. So let's take a look at one by one. Okay, so I guess I have read somewhere it's about Robin Hood, isn't it? So that is a question. It's quite an interesting question. So what do you think about that, Dr. Zaireena?
The question about Robin Hood?
Yeah, but I have seen somewhere, but I couldn't access it earlier. Is there?
In the chat.
Yeah, in the chat where they say that what they call it, because of Robin Hood is stealing, and Robin Hood took from the rich to give to the poor, but in the first place, the rich took almost everything from the poor since there is no effort being made by those in power. Why can't Robin Hood take that from the rich and give it to the poor?
Why can't Robin Hood?
The question is out of context, but then we can just discuss over here.
Right. Robin Hood was brought up in the case of Kant's Ethics of Duty. So it's talking about universal law, this first categorical imperative. So stealing universally is something bad, right? So from Kant's Ethics of Duty, you cannot steal because you're going against the first categorical imperative, and what Robin Hood is doing is stealing, despite it giving it from the rich to the poor, right? I think in Islam also we prohibit stealing, right? So what Robin Hood is doing is principally is wrong. Is that you're muted?
Yeah. Is there any other question you can just raise your hand? Okay. Is it okay? Okay. So is it possible? Yeah.
Is it possible that a universal justice be transformed into particular justice? Universal justice transform into particular justice, right? So that's talking about Aristotle's theory of justice, right? So universal or procedural justice is the universal application of justice as a moral concept of virtue. A just or morally upright person who is always does what is morally right. So that's talking about universal or procedural justice. And then
we do have another question, which is from Mustafa Hassan. So, can ethical principle be universal and based on utilitarianism? Can sacrificing one innocent person for many ever be justified?
Ethical principles, if it's morally relative, right? There are moral objectivism and moral relativism. So it can be culturally relative when you take the to the view of moral relativism. Utilitarianism, sacrificing one innocent person for many, is justified based on utilitarian principles, right? So it's for the greatest good, for the greatest number. So it looks at the majority good for the greater good for the majority people. So based on utilitarianism, you can sacrifice one person for the many. human rights of one person is conflict with another person's rights. How to reconcile, right? That is the downside of the theory of rights. How to reconcile when there are conflicting rights, right of the academic staff in the university, for example, the right of students in the university. So there may be conflicting rights. So how do we how do we reconcile it? It could be based on what kind of principles that we want to apply. Next week, Dr. Afifa will look at the Islamic perspective, and hopefully there is an answer for that. Ends does not justify means, according to Dr. Suharni. Right. That's Machiavellian principle that the end justify the means, which we reject on Islamic basis. Why put all the blame on Robin Hood? Is it like Hamas attacking Israel and blaming everything on Hamas? Robin Hood. Robin Hood can be seen from one perspective as helping the poor, right? So he's trying to make the society equal by taking from the rich and giving to the poor. So that's one perspective where you justify the actions of Robin Hood, but still stealing is stealing. So according to Kant's ethics of duty, you cannot do it. Hamas attacking Israel, blaming everything on Hamas. Is it?
So there is a bigger discussions that we will like go into it, but then I do understand about Robin Hood days because of eventually stealing is not the things that you are indeed is not the right things, isn't it? So wherever it is, stealing is not the right thing to do. Okay, so kan kita cakap macam mana niat tak menghalalkan cara, isn't it? So isn't it? So I would like to say there's a lot of Prof. Suhaimi said that rights will emerge once we execute our duties of Muslim. So that's the fitra. Thanks, Professor Suhaimi, for the what they call response. So I would like to say thank you once again to Assistant Prof. Dr. Zaireena Wan Nasir for that enlightening session. So we are now at the end for the break, isn't it? Once again, the clap to Assistant Prof. Dr. Zaireena Wan Nasir for this session. So as she mentioned, next week it will be Assistant Prof. Dr. Afifa who are going to explain more about Islamic what they call theories and everything, isn't it? Okay. So we will now now take a short break to allow everyone time to refresh, pray, or and maybe attend to personal matters. So our break will run from 10:30 until 11 in the morning. But I kindly invite everyone to return slightly earlier by maybe 10:50 in the morning, as I will be introducing our next two speakers, Associate Prof. Dr. Nurita Juhdi and Assistant Prof. Dr. Fatin Husna Suib. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Zaireena. So we're going to So, because of this is Assistant Dr. Nurita and Dr. Fatin first appearance in our series, and I'd like to take a few minutes to highlight their background and give you a sense what to look forward in their session. So please enjoy your break, and we will look forward to seeing you back here by 10:50 in the morning, inshallah. Okay?
MM, please, MMSC.
Cuma nanya nih.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and welcome back everyone. So we have okay. So we have a lot of people over here as I can see on the chat. We do have currently or ex-students of IIM, as I can see over here. It's my friend as well when I'm doing my PhD at IIM. So you're going to wait for others to fill up the audience, okay? Ibrahim Adewale, is it? Dr. Adewale? Okay, so please admin remember to enable recording. So please admin remember to enable recording. Okay, so once again, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and welcome back everyone. So I hope that my voice are clear currently and I hope you had a refreshing break and thank you for returning promptly. So we are now about to begin the second half of our program and I'm truly excited to introduce the remaining two speakers who will be presenting their session for the first time in this series. So last week, both of two speakers are not here. So this is their first time in joining in this series, okay? Okay, so let us begin by, I guess, Dr. Nurita and Dr. Fatin Suib. Okay, Dr. Fatin is okay. Okay, so let us begin by welcoming Associate Prof. Dr. Nurita Juhdi, a senior academician at International Islamic University, Malaysia. So, okay, wait. Okay, so Dr. Nurita, so basically holds a Bachelor of Economics from IIM, followed by an MBE and a PhD from University Tun Abdul Razak, or what it is known as UniRazak. So she began her academic career at UniRazak before joining International Islamic University Malaysia in 2011. Okay, and then she specialized in human resource management and has also taught a range of management and economic courses at undergraduate as well as postgraduate level. So her research is focused on HRM related themes and is widely published in index journal with presentation at both local as well as international conference. So her work has been supported by various grants and including from Ministry of Education in Malaysia. So today, Dr. Nurita will be speaking on human resource management, which is today's focus will be more on performance. Okay. Okay. So, okay. I would like to remind you again to mute your microphone as well as the video itself. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next, I am pleased to introduce Assistant Professor Dr. Fatin Husna Suib, which is a lecturer at IIM as well, a vibrant force in the fields of entrepreneurship, digital business, as well as marketing. So Dr. Fatin and her PhD in business economics from University Putra Malaysia, or what we are known as UPM. So she is known for her dynamic teaching style and her ability to bring real-world application into the classroom. So she has led numerous entrepreneurship initiatives, including Entrep Week, which she advises and trains, offering students and communities real opportunities to innovate and commercialize their ideas. So beyond academia, Dr. Fatin has designed and delivered digital entrepreneurship training for hundreds of B40 entrepreneurs across Malaysia and developed impactful programs such as YSM Sejahtera, IIIT, and Tactic. So her workshop on AI-driven marketing, social innovation, and financial literacy have empowered many, especially youth and underserved communities. Okay, also as a prolific researcher, she has written extensively on topics such as Islamic ethics in marketing, service quality, digital inclusion. So today she will close our session with the topic of establishing ethical and legal foundation in entrepreneurship, which is reminding us that true innovation must be rooted in accountability, Islamic values, and sustainable development. So once again, welcome back. So we look forward to those insightful presentations starting shortly, inshallah. So we have, right now we have Dr. Nurita over here with us. How are you, Dr. Nurita?
I'm fine, Alhamdulillah. So I'm supposed to share my slide, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay, you can just do that. Okay, we do have like another 3 minutes, so maybe we can take a look at the chat, at the Zoom chat first. So I have seen from Uganda, Tanzania, Philippines, Hong Kong, Nigeria, and of course most of us from Malaysia as well. So I'm glad to see everyone is here right now. So as I've said before, so we are going to begin. We are now proceed to our third lecture of the morning. So it is still 10:57 in the morning, isn't it? So there's 3 minutes left. Okay. So as I've said before, if there's any question, you can just ask question through the chat box. So we can just go through it. And then please welcome Associate Prof. Dr. Nurita Juhdi, who will speak on human resource management, an important topic, I guess. No, yeah, not I guess, it's an important topic. So that, so we look forward to learning more on how performance and Islamic principle influence each other. Okay, so can we begin? Like 2 minutes only. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at the chat first. Okay, sorry. Okay, okay. So we do have from Kenya. Okay. So we do have another one, which is Dr. Fatin, right after Dr. Nurita. So I have actually explained about their what I call the background. So so maybe you can just what I call start these sessions after the break, isn't it? So Dr. Nurita, are you ready?
yes, I am.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. So you may begin. So the floor is yours. Okay.
So may I start now or wait until 11?
11. Oh, okay. Yes, you can start right now.
Can start. Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to use the presentation note. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullah, and good day. I'm not going to say good morning because for some of you who are in the other parts of the world, maybe now it's in the evening. So I would say good day to everyone. So thank you very much for being here. And I am Nurita Juhdi. I'm here actually to share with you some insights about performance management and Islam. Okay, so let me start without further ado. Okay, all right. So what is performance management? Yeah, performance management actually is the process of creating a work environment in which people can perform to the best of their abilities. So performance management actually is like an umbrella. It covers the various functions in human resource management, such as recruitment, selection, training and development, compensation and benefits, occupational safety and health, employee relations, and many more. So the other function that is also covered by performance management is performance appraisal. So here we move on to performance review or performance appraisal. So the name, there are different terms used. That is performance review, performance appraisal, and performance evaluation. So these are used interchangeably. So what is performance review? Performance review actually is a process in which a manager evaluates the employee's performance relative to the requirements of the person's job and uses the information to show the person where improvement can be made. So this is the process where the manager will evaluate the employee's performance, the employee's actual performance, to be compared with the work target or KPI. KPI actually is key performance indicator. So the work target or KPI will be set at the at the beginning of the year. Normally, in organization, the work target is set in January. Okay, so at the end of the year, after 12 months, in December, for example, then the manager will compare the actual performance of the employees with the work target that is set at the beginning of the year. So the KPI or the work targets that are used to measure the employees' performance, they are normally in financial and non-financial measures. But they still fail to account for both material aspects, especially the humanistic and spiritual aspect. Okay, what is material aspect? Material aspect in performance appraisal is like the worldly aspect that are used to measure the performance of employees. For example, the dollars and cents, ringgit Malaysia, the revenues, the sale, the profit, the market share, And the other aspect that's also measured in performance appraisal is like humanistic aspect. Humanistic aspect is like the employee discipline, employee manners, the attitude, punctuality, satisfaction, happiness at work, motivation, turnover, their skill, And the other one, that is spiritual aspect, that is also evaluated in performance appraisal. For example, like the ethical values, the religiosity, trustworthiness, altruism. But in most organizations, the aspect that are mainly evaluated are material aspect. And the aspect that is least evaluated is the spiritual aspect. Let's move on. So this is the performance management process. There are a few steps. So the first step is to set the to be clear with the mission, vision, and goals of the organization. So every organization have its own goals, mission, and vision. For example, in Islamic university, right? So in an Islamic university, the mission and vision is about to achieve ummatic excellence by implementing Islamic values within the modern work life. So whenever an organization would like to evaluate an employee's performance, number one is to set clearly the goals, the mission and vision of the company, right? Okay, and then goes to step 2. Step 2 is to set the behavioral expectation and standard that is aligned with step 1, with number 1. So meaning that here, when in step 2, the organization must come up with the work targets or the key performance indicator or the KPI, and the work targets must be in line with the company mission, vision, and goals. So they must be aligned. Okay, all right. So in other words here, every center, every department, every division in the organization will have their own respective work targets or KPI, and all the KPI set by the different divisions, different offices in the company, they must be in line with the organization mission, vision, and goals. So when all the KPIs, targets that they are achieved at the lower level, automatically the goal set at the company level, the mission and visions, they will be achieved. Okay, so step number 3 is once the KPI, the work targets are clearly set, then come the implementation. Okay, all right. So step 3 is to let the employees to work, perform their tasks, duties and responsibilities, and there must be ongoing feedback. So this is like check and balance where the manager will monitor the employees, and if the employee's performance did not meet with the target, then the manager will give the feedback to the employees and ask the employees what's wrong, and the employees will learn how to go back on track, right? So step 3 is about 12 months. Normally, organization gives 12 months to their employees to perform and work in order to achieve the KPI. And then come number 4, step 4. Okay, step 4 actually is the moment of truth. That is when the employees are already given 12 months, for example, in December at the end of the year, where the employees will submit to the office of the company, report to the company the actual achievement and performance. So the manager, upon getting the reports from the employees, all the achievement, whatever that they have done throughout the 12 months, then the actual performance will be compared with the set target or the KPI. So in some organization, the performance appraisal will be conducted face-to-face with the manager, one-to-one, employee and manager. But sometimes it is conducted digital. Digital means that the employee will submit the appraisal online, and the boss will review the form and to give feedback online. Okay, all right. So this is to save the time. And then once the manager gives the feedback, and once the employee get the feedback, so comes step number 5 and number 6. Step number 5 and number 6 is to communicate the results to the employees, and for the employees to know what rating that the employee gets. For example, the company use performance rating 1 to 10. 1 poor, 10 is very good. So this is the time where the employee will get to know where he stands, whether he has performed above the average or below average or just average. Okay, all right. So next, all right, yeah. So this one is about the purposes of performance management. Why performance management or why performance appraisal is conducted. So performance management is conducted with 2 major purposes, which are developmental and also administrative purposes. For the developmental purpose, which is here, number 1 here, this aspect is more about the humanistic and spiritual aspect. Okay, earlier on, I mentioned about the 3 aspects which are considered in in performance management. That is humanistic aspect, spiritual aspect, as well as the material aspect. The material aspect is covered by the administrative purpose. The humanistic and spiritual aspect, they are covered by the developmental purpose. Okay, so let's discuss the developmental purpose first. All right, what is developmental purpose? Okay, developmental purpose of performance appraisal actually is to give feedback to the employees on how well or how poor they have performed. And this is very important because this is the time where the manager will make a thorough assessment about the employee's strengths and weaknesses, potential, their talents, their hidden talents. So this is also the time for the manager to recognize the employee individual achievement, so this is the time where they will identify the people who are shining, this is time for people to realize who they are. All right. So for the employees who go through the process of performance appraisal, this is also a process for them to do the muhasabah. Muhasabah is like the self-reflection where you will evaluate yourself on your strengths, on your weaknesses, your talents, using your own perspective. And when you get your feedback from other people, for example, from your boss, that will enrich the knowledge that you have about you. All right. So it's normal for humans to make mistakes, to commit errors. So what the employees can do is they learn from the mistake because they know that they're not perfect. So that's why performance appraisal, it must be conducted with good faith or husnul zon, with good intention, because this is not a process of finding people's mistakes. Instead, this is a process of identifying people's weaknesses with the aim to improve the weaknesses. So there must be also two-way communication between the manager and the employee, because this is a time, at the end of the year, for example, this is time for the manager and the employee to meet one-to-one and discuss openly about the problems that the employee is facing, or what is it that make him or her difficult to achieve the work target. Okay, then come the second purpose. Second purpose is about administrative purpose of performance appraisal. That is, okay, this one, as I said earlier, this is to address the material aspect. Okay, what is material aspect? Material aspect, as I said earlier, is about dollars and cents. It's about achieving the revenue, profit, market share. It's worldly kind of achievement. So this is the process where the manager will determine the fate of the employee, whether the employee should get the salary increment, whether the employee should get the bonus, whether he or she should get the promotion, or whether the person should be transferred or demoted or maybe terminated. So this is why performance appraisal is very important, because whenever a company wants to identify people that need to be terminated or demoted, they have to have the proof or the evidence. So the evidence is performance appraisal. So if they do not conduct performance appraisal, then they don't have any evidence to say that that employee has to be terminated or has to be transferred or demoted. Otherwise, without the evidence, the decision to demote an employee or the decision to transfer or terminate an employee will be very, very unfair. And when the case is brought to court, then the burden to prove that the employee must be terminated is on the employer. So normally, the employer will be in hard time. So that's why it's always safe for the company to have performance appraisal. Right. Okay, so let's move on. Next, yeah? All right, next is the sources of performance appraisal. All right, what is this? This is actually who should give the evaluation about the employees, because we know that performance appraisal, that is the time where the employee will get the feedback. After working for 1 year, for example, the employee must get the feedback from various stakeholders, how good or how bad they perform. So these are all the people who are in the position to evaluate the employee's performance. So number one is the manager or the supervisor. That is the immediate supervisor. All right. So in every organization, normally the one who have the right to evaluate the performance of the employee is the immediate supervisor. Okay, all right. And then the other one is self-evaluation, or like I said just now is like muhasabah, self-reflection. This is done by the employee themselves. So some organizations, they let the employees to rate their own performance. All right. So normally, self-review, it's not to determine their salary increment. It's not to determine how many bonus that they will get. No. Normally, self-evaluation is used for development purpose, in order to know whether the person feel that the person has the ability to perform the job, whether he or she has worked hard enough to achieve the KPI. Alright? Okay. And then number 3 is subordinate evaluation. Subordinate evaluation means the subordinate will get to evaluate the boss, which is a bit rare. Alright? For example, I believe that most of us here are the subordinates like me, right? So being the subordinate, I would love to tell my boss how good or how bad my boss has been performing. So what is it that I would like to evaluate about my boss? Maybe I would like to tell my boss how good or bad he or she is in terms of delegating tasks, whether he or she is being fair, whether she or he play favoritism, whether she or he is supportive when we are in need. Okay, so this is for development purpose rather than administrative purpose. But in most organizations, subordinate evaluation is not implemented. Okay, all right. Next is peer evaluation. Peer evaluation, team evaluation. That is the evaluation that is done among employees at the same level. This is for jobs that are basically conducted in team-based organization. Of some jobs, they are working as a team. So when you work as a team, there must be a high level of cooperation, working together. So that's why peer evaluation, team evaluation is important. Okay, last one is customer evaluation. This is when the customer gets to evaluate the employee's performance. For example, we Grab service in order to go to places. So sometimes after we're done using the Grab, we get to rate the ride experience, whether we like it, not like it. Okay, so this information will go direct to Grab, and then also go direct to the driver, so that they know their own performance. All right. And I think what is not in slide is the 360-degree appraisal. 360-degree is actually a full circle. It means that at one time, an employee is evaluated by more than one appraiser. For example, as a lecturer, for example, I am being appraised by my boss, by my dean, and also by my student. Okay? So, and sometimes maybe I will also be appraised by my colleagues. Right? So this is 360-degree appraisal, which I do not include in the slide here. So let's move on to the performance review methods. What is performance review methods? This is actually about how performance appraisal is conducted, right? Right. So in order to measure employee performance, because just now, earlier I said that when we want to evaluate employees' performance, there are 3 different aspects, right? Number 1 is the humanistic aspect. Number 2 is the spiritual aspect. And number 3 is the material aspect. Okay, the material aspect here is the third one. Okay, but before that, let's discuss the first and second one. Okay, so the first and the second one here, which is trait approaches and behavioral approaches, these are to measure the humanistic and spiritual aspect. Okay, because they are measuring the characteristics of the employees. the behavior of the employees. Okay, so let's go number one, yeah, which is trade approaches. Yeah. In our performance appraisal, I believe that most of you have gone through this process yourselves. Sometimes in the performance appraisal, our trade is also evaluated. What are the recommended Muslims? Okay. So number one here is our trustworthiness, our sincerity, the excellence, justice, and responsibility. Okay, so let's see number one here, amanah or trustworthiness. Because in our job, sometimes there are times when we are left alone. There's nobody looking. There is no CCTV checking. There is no boss monitoring us. It's just you who has access to the company resources. You have, for example, a salesperson who has to handle the cash register in the shop. He has access to the money inside the cash register. So when nobody is looking, when there is no CCTV, is he amanah enough to use the money in the right way? All right. So this is one of the traits that must be evaluated in appraisal. Next is whether you are sincere. Sincere normally is whether you are willing to dedicate yourself to work. There are times when people, they go the extra mile to work. They don't care whether it is Saturday, Sunday, whether it is at night. They are willing to work even though it's not counted, in the lock, in the clock in and clock out. Yeah. All right. So what about excellency? It can't. Okay. It can't. Excellency is about whether we are willing to perform to our level best. Some people, they just work up to the minimum and that's all. But there are people, they will make sure that they go the extra mile. They make sure their work is checked. They use all the resources that they have access to in order to make sure that the work is done to the best of their ability. All right, and then this one is justice. Okay, justice is about being able to be fair, because sometimes, when we work, we always have conflict of interest. Conflict of interest, like what? For example, here, okay, maybe sometimes the people that we are dealing are our family members, our relative, or our friends that we favor. So when you have access to the information, or when you have access to the resources, sometimes we tend to favor the people that we like. So that we are not being just. All right. So given the conflict of interest that we always face every day, this is also the trait that is very important to be evaluated. And next is the responsibility, the level of responsibility that we have to carry on our shoulder. Sometimes it's very heavy. All right. So some people, the level of responsibility is very high, especially when they are assuming the high level positions, manager positions. So some people, they just cannot fulfill that kind of responsibility. Okay, all right, now, so let's move on to number 2, which is behavioral approach. Right, behavioral approach, how is it different from number 1? Number 1 is trait, your character. Sometimes it is seen, sometimes it is not seen, it's not visible. Number 2, it is visible. It is action-oriented. So, for example, like what? Let's say, visible action, how you talk to people, whether you talk to people nicely, whether you are being courteous, whether you use your manners, your body language, this is visible, yeah? Your facial expression. So there are many people that we are dealing every day around us, at work, for example, our client, our customers, our students, our peers, our bosses. So people are watching us, all right? People are watching us. So that's why our behavior also, it should be part of the performance appraisal. So I take an example from Khalifa or Umar al-Hattab. He also used his observation in order to determine the performance level of his associates. So he would check if the deputy had visited the sick people, whether the deputy had taken care of the slave, whether they had given treatment to the disenfranchised under their focus. So Khalifah Omar Al-Khattab also used information that he collect using his information. Means that he cannot just rely on the trade of the deputies. He also must see for himself, witness for himself the action by the subordinates. Right, so I know that this is not easy for the managers to do it today, because sometimes a manager department have 40 subordinates. So how is he going to observe all the 40? So that is why sometimes we need different sources of information in order to give feedback about the behavior. So that's why, for example, for a lecturer, since my boss is not there to watch me behaving myself in the class, so that's why my student has the is given the ability to evaluate my performance. Okay, all right. So meaning that the boss can rely on other people's feedback. Okay, move on to number 3. Okay, number 3 is the result-oriented approach. So this approach is focusing more on the material aspect. Okay, so material aspect means that it is quantifiable. Normally, it uses some kind of measurement or metrics such as dollars, cent, units, how many thousand, you know. All right, so as Muslims, one should meet the requirement of the contract. You know, okay, what is contract here? Contract here is like the contract that we have with the other stakeholder. So, you know, as an employee, we have our job description, right? So we have our job description. In our job description, it lays down all the tasks, duties, responsibilities that we must fulfill, that we must perform. So based on this information that is taken from our job description, that will be used to derive the results that we must achieve at the end of the month, at the end of the year, for example. Okay, right. And then the other thing is the terms and conditions that is stipulated in the contract of service. So I believe that most of you who are being employed, I believe you still remember the day when you got the job offer from the company, and you are given the contract of service, the document, and inside you get to see the terms and conditions, number 1 until number 50, for example. So you must read each terms and conditions. That also stipulates, you know, the job requirements that you have to fulfill in your work performance. And then the result, this approach also, it is based on the you know, annual work targets. It means that in our performance appraisal, you know, if you refer back to the performance appraisal, you will see that the work target that is set for you to achieve at the end of the day is very clear. You know, sometimes it is in terms of dollars, cent, how many thousand, how many people. For example, as a lecturer, you must secure research grant 5,000 per year, and you must be able to publish one paper in an index journal. So that is result oriented, which is quantified, quantity in numbers. All right. So basically, these are the main 3 performance review methods. Of course, there are other methods actually, but these are normally the mostly used in performance appraisal. So next, we go to the next one. Okay. All right. So now that we have discussed about the performance management process, the purpose, the sources, and the methods. Yeah. So let's move to the performance management system from Islamic perspective. Alright, so as you know, based on the discussion just now, okay, it's just me talking actually, there's no discussion. Alright, you notice that the emphasis is more on the material outcome, that is results. So when a company put higher emphasis on the material, so it increased the tendency for the employees to cheat, to exaggerate, and sometimes they sabotage other people. Alright, so because they are too pressured to fulfill the KPI, because the KPI will determine their salary increment, the bonus, their transfer decision, promotion decision, so they have the tendency to manipulate the targets. Sometimes they inflate the results, So this happens when the company set too high targets. When the target is set is too high, so it makes the employees have the tendency to, of course, make the employee to work hard. But there are times that doesn't matter how hard they work, the employees fail to achieve the target. All right. The good things and the bad things, about the pros and cons about setting high KPI here. Sometimes it is too high that it promotes unhealthy competition among the employees, that they don't want to cooperate with each other anymore. So employees must perform to their level best, in order to attain the pleasure of Allah. As Muslims, that is our responsibility. It's compulsory for us to work to make Allah pleased with us, and Allah also make us accountable for our action. So meaning that as Muslims, when we work, we have two KPI. One KPI is the work KPI, the KPI that we must fulfill to our company, and the other KPI is the most important one, is the KPI to Allah. Okay, all right. So of course the KPI to Allah is not written in our company KPI, but because every human being has made the covenant, the promise with Allah to be the vicegerent. So meaning that when we work, when we serve, when we deal with the customers, with the clients, we must make sure that we work hard to our level best in line with the Sharia, so that Allah is pleased with us. Okay, all right. Then Allah will we must believe that Allah always consider our need or our intention, like is in line with the Surah Al-Ahqaf in verse 19, that and for all there are degrees of rewards and punishment for what they have done, and it is so that He may fully compensate them for their deeds, and they will not be wrong. Means that Allah will reward us or will punish us. Doesn't matter how small our deed is. Alright? So meaning here, doesn't matter whether our deed is valued or not valued by our boss, by our employee, by our customer. Always remember that Allah is always there to reward us. Okay? So we must be redha. We must have our open heart. When we work, even though nobody is looking, nobody appreciates you, Allah appreciates you. Right? So there are times when our work is beyond our control. Like stated there, our outcomes, they are beyond human's control. For example, when the economy is bad, remember during the COVID time, when the economy was bad, recession, doesn't matter how hard we work, we cannot make the sales, for example. The KPI is not achieved. So for some people, they will feel so frustrated and they just give up. But as Muslims, we believe that it's said that Allah, the Qadar and Qadar, that the destiny is so. What we can do is just work hard. Alright, even though we fail to achieve the target, Allah will reward us. Alright. So this is the thing that employer must consider. There are things that are beyond the control of the employee. So that is why when there are many factors out there that are beyond the employee's control, So they must consider this in setting the KPI or the work targets, right? Because the KPI must be fair. All right, now we move on, to the we're almost done. All right, like 10 minutes left. Yeah. All right. So, performance management system from Islamic perspective. In order to implement a performance management that is in line with Islam, it must be supported by three factors. Number one is there must be goal setting with consultation. There must be supported with strong leadership. And number three, it must be in line with the maqasid al-sharia. Okay, so let's discuss number one. Yeah. Okay, number one is goal setting with the consultation. Consultation with whom? All right, so let us reflect back from the story of our Prophet Muhammad. Nabi Muhammad SAW, he always sought advice from his companions, especially during the critical time when it's important issue. So, Shura occurred on the eve of the Battle of Uhud. While the Prophet Muhammad was thinking that the city should be defended from within, the majority wanted to go out to fight. So the Prophet accepted this view and he did not impose his own opinion over his companion. So meaning that as a boss, even though you are given the power, but you must always consult with your subordinates. So subordinates here, they are the people who are there working, dealing with the customers. They know the reality. So that's why the bosses must listen, get the advice, the views from the subordinates. And there are also good organizations, when they set new KPI, maybe the CEO changed, the company leader changed. Normally they will set the KPI, they will change the KPI. So normally before the new KPI is implemented, sometimes the company will get the feedback from the employees. So they will get the feedback by getting the representative of the employees, for example, the employee trade union, employee association. They will be consulted and they will be asked whether this KPI that they just formulated, is it fair, is it good? So that is good, two-way communication. Again, we're still at number one. How to set the goal? It must be SMART. SMART actually is an acronym: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and also timely. This is where the goal setter or the company, the manager, they must remember that for them to set the goal, it must be within the ability of the employees. So I mean that if the employee doesn't have the skill, send them for training. All right. If the employee, if the economy is too difficult, is in a recession, then reduce the bar a little bit. All right. So how to know whether the workload is not too high or not too low? Right. Okay. So that's why there must be consultation with the employees and managers, because they know, even though they are not in the higher rank, but they are the ones who are at the shop floor, deal with the customers, deal with the reality. Right, and benchmarking. Benchmarking also is good because this is a time where you have to go out, do survey, ask around other organizations about their KPI, so that you can compare with yours, so that you know whether you are practicing what is practiced by other people, or you are setting too high goals for your employees. All right, B. The second one, yeah. The second one is the Islamic leadership. All right, Islamic leadership here is. This is the other equally important factor in when we want to implement performance appraisal that is in line with the Sharia. So the leaders must be God-fearing, as you see here in the slide. The leaders must be honest, must be just, kind, compassionate, patient, must be humble, must have the forbearance, and must be trustworthy, which are rare. Okay, today these kinds of leaders are rare. That doesn't mean that it's impossible. Doesn't mean that they don't exist. They do exist, but they're just rare. So what the leaders can do is if they don't have these kind of traits, they must work hard in order to pick up these traits. All right, because the leaders, they have to be accountable because they have access to the resources, they have access to the money, to the company assets. So they must be amanah. All right, but of course it is difficult, for the leaders to be amanah all the time, because every day they are faced with competition. They have to deal with economic conditions that fluctuate up and down. Sometimes they are being tempted by bribes, corruption, conflict of interest. So that's why, leaders who are having this kind of traits, normally they are able to refrain themselves, from committing all this unethical behavior. Right? So when the leaders are ethical, inshallah, the performance appraisal will also be fair. Okay, our last one, which is also equally important. I say last one doesn't mean that it is the least important. They are all equally important. Okay, it's Maqasid Syariah. Maqasid Syariah is a system that aims to secure the benefit for the people and protect the people against corruption and evil. So according to Imam Al-Ghazali, there are 5 elements, which are the religion, life, intellect, posterity, as well as wealth. So the performance management, it must be in line with this Maqasid Syariah. All right. Now we have reached to our last slide. Yeah. Okay. All right. 10 minutes left. Okay. So in organizations, employees are expected to achieve their work target. They're expected to work very hard to please Allah. So the work environment, it must be able to support the employees' life at work. Employees must be provided with the training, with the development, in order to develop their akal, their intellect. So that's why when the company set high target that require high level of intelligence, then the employee must have that high level of intelligence. So the employee must be given the training, right? And the second one is the preserving life. Preserving life is about security of life, safety, So in organization, occupational safety and health is very, very important. Today, there are many organizations that are not safe, they are not healthy, they are very stressful organizations. So this is also another factor that make employee will be able to achieve the work target. If the work environment is safe, healthy, with the right ambience, definitely the employees will feel safe and happy and will be able to achieve the work target, inshallah, right? Okay, what about the wealth or mal? Organizations has many amenities, infrastructure, there are assets, there are money, a lot of money, buildings, So the performance management should be able to prevent abuse of these resources. Okay, all right. So the fourth one is the protection of deen or religion. Okay, so doesn't matter how busy our schedule is, we must never abandon our obligation to Allah, that is to perform our salat, to do hajj, doesn't matter how rigid your schedule is, the company must give the facilities to the employees to be able to perform the obligation as a Muslim. So these are the 3 factors that support performance appraisal is in line with the Sharia. So I guess, that's all. Thank you very much.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nurita, for raising such a vital and reflective point. As I love to, it is interesting to see that in many modern organizations, performance is like promoted, predominantly measured through material outcomes or KPI, often with high target that may neglect ethical boundaries or personal well-being. So, however, as a Muslim, we understand that our ultimate KPI, as I said by Dr. Nurita, it's not set by human expression alone, but by Allah Ta'ala. So our true measure of success lies in attaining His pleasure. So that's why it comes with excellent econ, sincerity, justice. So we need to do our best, not just to meet the company's target, but fulfill our moral and spiritual responsibility. I love when you said that. So let's take a look at the question in the chat box. So one of the question from Nadia, in performance evaluation, is it appropriate for Muslim employee to rate their own performance as 100%? And how does this align with Islamic values such as humility, tawadu, trustworthiness, amanah, and self-accountability, muhasabah? So could you elaborate on how this value should guide the Muslim approach to self-appraisal in professional settings?
Okay, so for self-evaluation or self-appraisal, or we use the word muhasabah, I think if you believe that you have worked very hard, why not? You can give 100% to you, 10 over 10, 100 over 100. However, in most organizations, the self-appraisal, it is for development purpose. That is used to for you to know your strengths and weaknesses and talent. It is not to determine your admin goal. That information will not be used to determine your salary increment, your bonus, your promotion. That will be determined by other methods. Okay. Normally, self-appraisal is just for us to reflect back. Okay? And for us to be humble, to realize, okay, this is all the things that I have done, and if I believe that I have done well, then why not? You can give yourself a perfect score. Why not? So I believe so. Okay.
Assalamualaikum, Doctor. So interesting. Basically, my question is how to apply all these Islamic value with the company, with the non-Muslim, and also the multinational company.
Okay, all right. Okay, that is a very difficult question, but I know that is also a very practical one, because most of us are working in a company that is dominated by the non-Muslims, and we work with companies that are not based on Islamic principle. So, it doesn't matter, if the company is owned by Muslim or non-Muslim, it goes back to you. Like I said just now, when we work, doesn't matter we work in Islamic organization or non-Islam organization, always remember that our KPI, there is two. One is for the company, the other one is for Allah. Okay? So even though we work in an organization that is not based on Islamic principle, sometimes the KPI is still good, is still ethical. The rate that they use in order to measure our performance also is still in line with the Sharia. So as long as the KPI that is set is not violating the Sharia, is still in line with the Sharia, why not? It's also Islamic, right? It doesn't have to write Islam there in order to be Islamic, right? But we have to be careful. Sometimes there are jobs that require us to satisfy the clients, that we have to reveal our rights. For example, for the ladies, right, we have to reveal our right. Okay, if that is the case, then I think we have to speak up. Or sometimes sometimes we are required to entertain the customers at the karaoke. We have to sing, we have to drink, with them. Okay, this is the time for you to speak up. I believe some managers who are non-Muslim, they are willing to listen, especially today, where organizations, especially MNC, you mentioned about MNC just now, right? They are very concerned about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusivity. So they will consider your religion. So if they don't want to listen to you, then actually you have the right to speak up. You have the right to be treated as a human being, to be treated as a Muslim. All right? Okay, but that's your choice. Okay, right, thank you.
Okay, thank you once again, Dr. Nurita, for such an engaging and aptly conversation. So we do have a lot of questions over there, but then unfortunately, due to time constraints, we won't be able to address all of them during these sessions. Once again, thank you, Dr. Nurita. Okay, so maybe you would like to move on with our next session. Thank you once again, Dr. Nurita. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so and now for our final session of the day, okay, I am pleased to introduce our next speaker, which is Assistant Prof. Dr. Fatin Husna Suib. Okay, so let's welcome her. Just for a minute, okay? Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
Zaireena start. Okay.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Fatin. So her session title is Establishing Ethicals and Legal Foundation in Entrepreneurship. For me, I guess a powerful topic to close our day, reminding us that innovation and growth must be upon accountability and Islamic ethics. Okay, Dr. Fatin, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, so the platform is yours.
Okay, so Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So thank you very much to Dr. Izzati. So this is the closing slide for today. I think we've actually go through a lot of ethicality, and for my slide, it's actually more on my presentation is actually basically based on real business issues or real case scenarios. And then what I want to give out here is actually the examples of businesses that have gone through legal issues, okay, when it comes to the ethical issues within them. There are many ethical issues, basically, but in my presentation, I just will give out the most ethical issues that many businesses did. Okay, so for the foundation of ethical issues, I think you have covered from Dr. Zaireena and also Dr. Nurita. So now I'm going to bring you to the real situation a little bit. Okay. So basically, just an introduction about some business ethics. So definition of ethics in Islam basically based on akhlaq, especially for the employer, for the owners of the business. Okay, that is rooted in Quran and Sunnah. So important in daily transaction and business dealings. So Islamic ethics is not just spiritual, but it also applies to every transaction and business deal. Okay, so there are 4 main characteristics of ethical issues in business. These are some of the ethical issues, but I'm not covering everything, but I will just give you some overview what is going on in our world a little bit. Okay, so the characteristic of ethical issues must follow these 4 main characteristics. The first one is long-term consequences, okay, and then it have multiple alternative, mixed outcome, and uncertain consequences, which I will explain after this. Okay. Wait. All right. So wait. Okay. So most ethical decisions have long-term consequences. Some of the examples that most businesses do is on the corruption part. Okay, this one happened across the world. I'm not going to specific in Malaysia base. And then we have pollution, okay, that threatens environmental health, and unsafe product that could result in loss of life or over-the-claim products. Okay, so this is the scenario that I will give you bit by bit. Okay, so the corruption is basically giving money to the third party for the company own self benefits. Okay, so that is something that being done by many, I think not all, but some of the companies in the world. Okay, and then we have pollution. I think this one been done by some companies, especially before the environmental things happen, environmental safe movement happen. Okay, there are many companies that do a lot of pollution to the environment and also over the clean products, and some of the products can be total unsafe for the human consumption or even animal consumption if the company sell a pet product or human or animal byproduct. Okay. Okay, the first one will be the corruption part. Okay, so this is the example of the bribery scandal that happened in 2008. Okay, so this is from the company Siemens, okay, a global engineering and electronic giant based in Germany. So what they did, they basically want to secure public contracts, okay. So I think in many countries have this as well. But they actually have a systematic bribery system for the government officials when it comes to this company. So this company bribe across many sectors within the country that involve telecommunication, transportation, and it occur generation by generation. Means that it's not happen very short term. It's a very long term we call period of time. And the scandal uncovered over 1.4 billion in suspicious payments. So the legal outcome that the Siemens needs to actually pay is around 1.6 billion in fines to US and Germany because they make this bribery for both these countries. Okay, so the executive that involved were investigated and prosecuted. Okay, the case prompted widespread reforms in corporate governance and compliance around the globe. Okay, so from this issue, there are many acts come out from this type of situation. Okay. Okay, most ethical decisions also have mixed outcomes. For example, like offering bribes indirectly maintain import product sales as good can be received more quickly. Means that the company pay the third party more under table money so that they can actually get the product quicker than the other companies. Okay, so that kind of thing happen. So polluting air or water may reduce the cost of installing or operating, but operating pollution control equipment. So they just, for example, like they just put out all the for example, oil into the oceans, so that it will reduce their cost in trying to make the byproduct become pure again so that is actually reducing the cost of operating on the pollution part. Okay, and then design is less safe product that may lower material and labor costs in production. This one happened, I think, in Malaysia. We have cosmetics that have mercuries. Okay, it will give a very short outcome, very effective short outcome, but in the long term, it's going to harm the human health overall. Okay. Okay, the second case is Exxon Valdez oil spill that happened in 1989. One of the most devastating human-caused environmental disasters. Okay, releasing crude oil into Alaskan waters. Okay, so basically this is it's a big company that I quote here. Okay, so the oil tanker is actually at the Alaska and then spill over 11 million gallons. Okay. And then it will kill many of the marine birds, mammals, the otters. Okay, so it will actually take around 1,300 miles of coastlines of the Alaska waters. So the legal outcome is around 507.5 million, but I think damage has been done. Even the damage is to pay that half of the $1 billion, but I don't think that it's actually very hard to relieve the Alaska water from the pollution after it happened in 1989. Okay. Okay, so most ethical decisions also have uncertain outcomes. Okay, so basically, when a company offers a bribe, it may receive imported goods that may come quickly. And a company, if they invest in pollution control equipment, the cost might be reduced, but it's actually uncertain. Okay, that's why some companies, they make unethical decisions. Okay, if the company produce safest possible product, certain additional cost must be added for each unit of the product. So basically, this is the situation that the owners might come across a better option, and from the decision of the better option decision, they need to ask about their own integrity and ethics when it comes to make a decision for this, like this one. Okay. This is a very popular case from Johnson & Johnson baby powder lawsuit. Okay, so this one, I think most of the household have this powder. Okay, Johnson & Johnson baby powder have asbestos basically before this. I think they already changed the ingredient inside it after this lawsuit. Okay, and then it's actually associated with cancer risks. Okay. And then there are exposure to cause cancer and other illness. Okay, and they got lawsuit from their consumers basically. So they pay their consumers around 2.1 billion for 22 women that linked with the product to they got ovarian cancer, unfortunately, because of the asbestos. Okay, so when a company did an unethical decision, this is something that can happen to the consumer, and it's actually quite big. Okay. Okay, so this is the internal risk factor that can be controlled by the company. The first one is the management within the company itself. Of course, management includes operation, finance, HR, and then they have marketing. Okay, so all of these sites must be aligned with ethicality. Okay, because I think in Malaysia we have, if I talk about the side of digital marketing or marketing itself, it's not really ethical. Some of the business sellers love to come up with very bad and negative news, or they come up with some issues that to create hype, which is also not good for the business in the long run, even though it's actually good for the short term, but it's not good for the long run in terms of the company image, and also from the from the trust that will be given by the consumers and also their shareholders, even suppliers or operation wise. Okay, so operation, so that is basically management that the business can actually control when it comes to ethicality. The second one will be the location wise. The company can choose their location, where to operate, where to do their manufacturing. Okay, even where to put their stores and shops. Okay, and then to choose suppliers, the location of the suppliers, and so on. Okay, so basically this is the business factor that can be controlled by the company in order for them to get the best choice for the location wise. The location is very important for a business to reduce their cost and effectiveness for the overall business operation. Okay. Next is loss of business interest. Some owners, they lost their business interest in the middle of after maybe 3 to 5 years. They can actually control it by having giving back and put some innovativeness in their business. Okay, they cannot just leave it like that, and they get out from the business without considering employees and all. Okay? So some owners, they love to change products, even the product line. If we talk about some business owners that love to change product when their product is not hype anymore. They change it to another product. So it will cause the domino effect to the agents. Okay, so if let's say they have agents for their business, basically it will impact the agents because they buy their product to the owner, and then they resell it to the consumers. Okay, so business interest is actually look not really big, but it's actually very big if let's say you are a very big company. Okay, so a company must maintain their business interests by having good innovation. Okay, good innovation and good strategy to complement each other product. Okay, for example, like if you are selling rice, you are selling together with its meal, rather than you sell product that is actually going to be a competitor for the rice lah, basically. And then the fourth factor would be mismanagement, intentional and unintentional. Okay, unintentional is on the gray area. Some people, they do mistakes, but they don't recognize the mistakes. I mean, they don't think that that is wrong. Okay, but it will impact the whole company operation or the whole company profitability, and then they know that, oh, this is wrong. Okay, so basically what the company can do is to do audit. They need to audit at least like 3 times a year, just to know whether their operation is in line with their ethicality or integrity, okay, and then it can be trusted or not. So this is something that business can actually control. Intentional, they know that certain things are wrong, but they still do it for the sake of business or maybe their own self-interest. Okay, so this is happen also within the company, right? So which is very, very common. But the unintentional part is actually much more harder to realize for the company, but they need to do several times audit, just to know whether is it wrong or right. Okay, some things in a company is in the gray area, whether we don't know whether that is wrong or right. Okay, so this is something that company need to ponder, they need to work on in order for them to set their ethics right or integrity right across all the business operation wise lah. Okay, so this one are the external forces that cannot be controlled by the company. Okay, we have technological changes. Now we have AI. Okay, AI now is actually replacing human. We can see that Microsoft has been laid off for, I think, around 2,000 to 3,000 employees coming from engineers and AI engineers, software engineers, which we think that this position should not be laid off in this era, but now it's actually been replacing human resource. Okay, so and then of course the AI or the very high technology innovation is actually going to be reducing costs for the company. But how human you are when we talk about humanity in general when it comes to human resource. Yeah. Okay, so the Microsoft really need to think how to come out with a good, strategic plan rather than just lay off the employees. But this is not happen on Microsoft only, but there are many companies that actually being laid off people because of AI. Okay, so it's actually very concerning when it comes to the job employment among youth nowadays. And in university level, we are very conflicted about this issue because now people say that university can be replaced by AI. It's actually very your teachers can be replaced by AI. Something that you need to think about. How the system has been developed into thinking that we can just fit robots rather than human. We need human touch in our life. That is something, it's actually a human need. Okay. All right. Okay, so I think let's go to evolution of market trends. Okay, trends is normal in business, basically in business industry. Okay, so in Malaysia we have our netizen, people call it netizen in Malaysia, net citizen. Okay, short form netizen. Okay, Malaysian people love to follow trends. Okay, now we have trend of tiramisu for the product. Okay, and then this is something out of control because it's been done by many other sellers. Okay, so this is something that the business can follow the trends or not. Okay, so in entrepreneurship, basically, following the trend is good, but the trend should not change your ethics. Okay, so some people, they make trends out of that marketing. So some sellers are going to be using that as their strategy, which is, for me, it's not good. So whatever trends that is in the industry now, the company should really think whether they want to follow the trend or not. Is it going to deviate from their integrity or ethics or not? Something like that, because not all trends are good, even though it can increase your profit, but it will not be good if your integrity is not there. Okay, another factor for external factors that cannot be controlled by the company is the policy changes. This happen, for example, like the tax, okay, business tax, subsidy. Okay, so all these are going to impact the overall business operation and everything, from the product, from the price, from the cost of the business. Okay, and when it comes to the policy changes, it's actually going to impact the consumer as well, because we are the one who actually pay for the product. Okay, so this has happened for the Donald Trump tariff war. We call it Donald Trump tariff war. They've been imposed a certain percentage to China. China is being known as a country that have producing a lot of raw materials. They are one of the biggest manufacturer in the world. Okay, so it always going to impact at the end is the consumer. Okay, so when it comes to ethicality and integrity, we always need to think about what is going to what is the effect of the consumer will face when it comes to the policy changes. Policy changes we cannot control, but the company can actually put a little bit of humanity, ethicality in the operation, okay, and try to justify why some of the products are high, but still in the range of prices that the consumer can buy, basically. Okay, and unpredictable economic climate. This one is economy-wise. This one also cannot be controlled by the company. But what the company can actually do is try to manage again their cost of labors and so on. That's why some of the factors here will impact the human resource and operations as overall. Okay. And then, of course, the competition as well within the same market. For industry, there are so many competition. Okay, but some industry does not have not have a very rigid competition. But some industries already in the competition right now. For example, like AI industry is actually it's getting hype up when it comes to the competition. You can see that there are many softwares of AI come out right now. We have DeepSeek and ChatGPT and so on. Okay, so when it comes to competition, food competitors, how they want to break the competition so that they can actually promote their product to the industry and to the consumer in an effective and most promising way lah. Okay. Okay. So business ethics begins with individual or the sellers of the owner of the business responsibility as the servant to prosper earth and care for the environment. Okay, so if I quote back of what the Nurita said about the Makasih Syariah, it's about the protection of wealth, okay, but it's also protection of ummah, basically, as overall. Okay, so the universal noble values as exemplified by the character of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so the Prophet also show us how to become a good ethical entrepreneurs. Okay, how to deal with certain issues comes to business. Okay, so starting from 1960s, society-based agenda with consumerism starts. Okay, so the consumer right has been heard a lot since 1960s. Okay, so in Malaysia also we have many channels to redirect the consumer rights. For example, we have Tribunal of Consumers, okay, and then we have MCMC for the digital transactions. Let's say the sellers are doing fraud towards them, they can actually claim and go into a small cases. Okay, so small case being backed up by the government, which is very, very important when it comes to the consumer right of the society. Okay, and why is actually ethics is important in the real life issues is actually defines what right and wrong. But there are some things that is on the gray area, which is that you cannot identify whether it's wrong or right. Again, there are many situations in a company, and whatever it is goes back to what the company truly ethics, what you call it, guideline. Okay, because during my PhD, I did a case for Malaysian Umrah fraud. Okay, there are many fraud in Umrah, basically, Umrah services. Okay, so at the end of the day, the company are being given a suggestion to come up with their own code of ethics. Okay, so because it involves with their employees, at the same time it involves with the part-time agents. So when it comes to Malaysian Umrah fraud, most of the fraud has been done by the part-time agents, not their employees. So they need to have a code of ethics that can bind these agents with rules and regulations. So code of ethics can be part of rules and regulations if the company wants to summon them for the frauds that they make. Okay? And in human relationship, ethics can build trust between individuals, but when it comes to the business, it's actually trust between companies and also customers, their shareholders, suppliers, even manufacturers. Okay, so if the company does not have ethics, basically the trust is not there. The customer doesn't want to buy their product. Supplier doesn't want to have any deals with the company. Okay, so they don't have good relationship with many people, right? So ethical principle originate from personal integrity. Start with the individual, basically, all right? That we carry into the business. Okay, so the individual must have this characteristic of integrity before they actually can run the business. Okay, so the first one is patience. Some business owners they cannot wait. They want a very fast result. This is a very red flag. Okay, So a business owner should be having a good patience to observe and wait for the result after working hard. Need to acknowledge the employee as well, their hard work. Okay, must have a very tactical strategy for the company and overall human resource that they have. Okay, so many business fail because they rush into starting up certain things. Okay, and neglect the pursuit of knowledge. Okay, so when it comes to entrepreneurship, knowledge is a very crucial part of the business. Okay, so a business owner should learn and should always increase their knowledge by time they have like done their business. Okay, it's actually a long-term commitment for entrepreneurs. So like me, I'm a entrepreneurship lecturer as well, and I teach entrepreneurship course at IIIT. So what I did, I legally registered my students from the government sector called SSM. It's a government body that will make a business legal in Malaysia. And then when they register their business legally, they are tied with consumer rights and rules and regulations being given by the government. Okay, and then like me, I'm also a trainer for entrepreneurs within the campus and outside the campus for public entrepreneurs. So what I can actually see that for startups, around 1 to 3 years of open up a business, the knowledge is different. Okay, and then after 3 to 5 years, I call it as a we call it on the mediate of the knowledge, not advanced yet. After more than 10 years, it's going to go to a very advanced level of entrepreneurship knowledge. So entrepreneurs must learn how to conduct their business, and they must learn simultaneously. They cannot stop learning. If not, they will outdate it themselves. The business also cannot sustain. Okay, because there are new knowledge always come out. Like me, I'm teaching my students on how to do digital business on social media platform. It's good for startups, but when it comes to a long-term business owners, they must go more than that. They must go beyond the startup's knowledge. Okay. And as a business owner, also they need to take calculated risks. Okay.
Yeah.
Hah?
Iya.
Ini bagaimana? Ini harus job rival.
Okay. So
Sebentar.
Can you mute
Antara dia.
for the participants? Can you mute the audio, please? Thank you.
all right. So they take calculated risks. For example, like competition risks, and then they have product cost risks. There are many risks in business, from human resource to management, operation wise, marketing, PR. So when it comes to entrepreneur, they need to think all the risks before they go into a big decision for the company. Okay, so and integrity owners, business owners also must have a good productivity. Okay, not only be able to produce a product, but also having the initiative to take the business further by having innovation, consider to add more product line. Okay, that is one of the strategy, or maybe consider to reduce the cost and go into a good innovative strategy as well. Okay, but without needing to let go the integrity that they have. Okay, so being productive is good, but if you being too productive and you cast aside humanity, that is not good. Okay, So for me, that is from my point of view lah. Of course, every business owner wants to think about how to reduce the cost, okay? But how they are going to tackle some issues is actually a different thing for the business lah. And the owner also must be frugal, okay? Spending on necessities, okay? So I train entrepreneurs when it comes to the financial side. There are two things that they need to expert in. The first one is personal finance, and the second one is the finance for the company, because company usually are different entities from the individual or the owner, him or herself. Okay, but they need to master the personal finance first, individual personal finance, because if they spend the company money for themselves, it's considered not ethics. Okay, because in business, if you have a big business, a bigger legal business, okay, you are going to make company is another entity, which is you're going to treat it as another person. So if you use another person money or another entity money, basically it's not ethics. Okay, so the owner must have a very good in managing their own finance, which I call as personal finance. Then they can actually manage another entity finance. Okay, and they follow standard procedures. Okay, so the company have procedures. They must come up with a good, strong procedures, and they cannot not use the procedure. They come up with a good code of ethics or ethical procedures, but they don't use it. Still, it's considered unethical as well. Okay? So to avoid misusing available allocation in terms of resources, right? So I think that's all. Okay. Some ethical issues. This is just a conclusion from all the slides before. The module before. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Fatin, for your insightful session. So, one point that truly resonated was your example regarding mercury-based skin whitening product. Yes, it's deliver quick, visible result, but they come with a severe side effects that compromise long-term health and well-being. And so, I guess from your explanation, so in Islam, business is not just about delivering outcomes or satisfying demand, but it is also being accountable to Allah SWT, isn't it? So it's like upholding truthfulness and then protecting dignity ataupun maybe safety of consumers. So we are accountable not only for the product and service we offer, but also for their impact on people as well as the society. So let this example, a good example from Dr. Fatin, so it reminds us in Islamic business, success is not merely measured by the revenue, but by responsibility. So a product that maybe violates safety or trust, even it sells well, has failed the ethical test of Islam. So let's open the floor one last time for the questions. So feel free to drop your thoughts or queries on the chat box. So so there is one question. So in today's digital age, we often see business leveraging viral trends. Viral trends to gain attention, sometimes through silly or sensational content. This is quite fascinating. So from an Islamic marketing or ethical perspective, what is your view on this strategy? So do the ends, attention, and reach justify the means it is work? So that's it, the questions.
Okay, I have many examples for this. Basically, unethical on the marketing part. Of course, we have ethics to basically not doing overclaim, because before this, I give you one example. There is a skincare line called Skintific. This is a very popular China product. Okay, and also it's popular in Malaysia. Okay, Skintific is a skincare line. Okay, so when they do their marketing, when it comes to their advertisement, they show that the product can be eaten. Okay, the cream, they use spoon and take out from the cream and then they put it in their mouth. and they eat the cream. That is a very bad marketing. But it's actually a very good hype. People kind of like, oh, we can eat the skincare now, something like that. And people start to do the trend as well for the other skincare, which is not a good trend. This is something that is not ethical, but the violation, which is good, the TikTok violate this type of advertisement. The government, Malaysian government also take control of this type of advertisements, so that not all trends are good. Okay, not all trends are ethics. Okay, so some people, they use other people's misfortune to do their advertisement, which is not good as well. Okay, so if I look at the digital marketing perspective, from the Islamic perspective, is actually condemning other people's product also is not ethics. Okay, so that is one of the examples from my memory lah. Okay.
Okay, so with that, because of you say that it's condemning, for me as well, it's not very ethical, so isn't it? Okay, and maybe you could give us some. Is there some red flags that business idea might be unethical, but even it seems profitable?
I think when it comes to what you call it, marketing, there is not much a very rigid rules and regulation, but when it comes to Malaysian government, we have consumer rights and rules and regulation for advertisement as well. But more than that, for example, like you create a bad hype, it's not actually been ruled out as wrong things. Okay? So it will depends on your own ethics and integrity as well, whether it's good for me, is it good for my consumer, or is it good for my competitor? So many companies, they don't care about their competitors. Okay, that's why they condemn other competitors' product. But in Islam, we must look competitors as our helpers as well. Okay, because if you go and see to one urban area, for example, you go to KL, you go to Kuala Lumpur, or you go to a mall. Malaysia have so many shopping malls. I'm not sure why. Okay, you go to a mall, you can see that different levels of malls. For example, level 1 have so many. It's actually categorization of one category. For example, the first level is all food court. It's all food courts, and then second level is all what you call skincare or makeup shops. Okay, why does it happen like that? Because in theory we have the what you call the application of competitor effects. Okay, so competitor will help you to generate your money, your profit, when you have all the competitors in one place. Okay, because people will gather there, and if they cannot find their product at the competitor, they will go to your shop. Okay, so that is one perfect example on the competitor. So we need to take care of our competitor as well, at the same time the customer and the community as a whole.
Okay, so there's only one last question. So there's from the chat. What is the Islamic view on hoarding a particular product?
Yeah, I do understand on this. I want to comment, but hopefully I don't touch on sensitivity of the people.
Okay. Yeah, because we will have another sessions, isn't it? Yeah, so another sessions in a little bit detail next week. But then, before that, I'm going to explain you a little bit more about what we're going to learn next week in the class. But before everything, so I would like to say thank you, Dr. Fatin. Thank you for ending our day with such clarity and conviction. So give a clap to Dr. Fatin, everyone. I do love everything that you're explaining, especially on examples. It's very clear. So we have learned a lot today. So thank you, Dr. Fatin.
Okay, thank you.
So Alhamdulillah, we have now come to end of our second sessions in the Islamic Business Management Certificate series. So on behalf of the organizing team, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to all our respected speakers. Today, Associate Prof. Dr. Rodrigue Fontaine, Assistant Professor Dr. Zaireena Wan Nasir, Associate Prof. Dr. Nurita, Juhdi, and Assistant Prof. Dr. Fatin, Husna, for your insightful, engaging, and value-driven presentation. So to all our participants, thank you for your active involvement, to thoughtful question, and of course, continuous present throughout the day from 8:30 in the morning until now, okay? As the moderator for today, I, Dr. Siti Nurul Izzati binti Hanafi, would like to sincerely apologize to both our speakers as well as our members. So please forgive me if there's a lot of things, isn't it? So if there were any shortcomings in managing to this flow, especially if certain questions were left unanswered, okay? Inshallah, we will take this as an opportunity to reflect and improve the structure and interactivity in the coming weeks. So we hope to see all of you again next Saturday at 9 in the morning, but then yes, we will begin at 8:30, 8:40, inshallah, for the continuation of this program. So before we part ways, I'd like to give you a quick preview of what we're going to look for our third session next week, inshallah. So we are pleased to share that session 3, which is 31st May, will continue to deepen our understanding of Islamic business value and practice with another exciting lineup of speakers. We will going to have, again, Associate Prof. Dr. Rodrigue Fontaine will begin with reflective session on Surah Al-Fatiha. So you don't miss that, okay? Another speaker will be Assistant Prof. Dr. Nur Afifa Abdul Sabian, where we have reading all the comment from Prof. Suhaimi saying about Tawhid paradigm, isn't it? So Dr. Afifa will be having those explanation and discussion on ethical system, Tawhid paradigm for managers. So exploring how Islamic ethics from the foundation of responsible governance. Okay, and then we move on to Assistant Prof. Dr. Noor Fariza Mustafa will present on human resource management. It is more on composition. So earlier we had performance, isn't it? So now we're going to look more on towards a topic of a composition. So it maybe address fairness, equity, motivation in Islamic HR practices. And finally, yes, we're going to have another entrepreneur marketing side, which is Dr. Al-Amir Emir. Assistant Prof. Dr. Al-Amir Emir will close the session with fundamental Islamic marketing principle for entrepreneurs. So for me, a crucial topic for those seeking to market ethically and effectively in this modern world. So we encourage you, everyone, to mark your calendar and join us again next Saturday at 8:30 in the morning. But we begin the lecture at 9 as we continue this important journey together. So that's all for today. Okay, so I may end and give it to the IIIT admin to end the session. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Siti Nur Izzati.
Yes, thank you very much for